Lena Carter's hands trembled as she scrubbed blood from marble floors in a mansion where maids disappeared without explanation. The rules were absolute: never look up, never ask questions, never acknowledge the man whose empire was built on fear. For 6 weeks, she'd been a ghost in Victor Kane's fortress, invisible, replaceable, forgotten. Until the moment she slipped from a ladder in his private wing and felt iron arms catch her mid-fall. Their eyes met for 3 seconds that shattered everything. Because in Victor Kane's world, being noticed meant only 2 things: protection or death. And Lena was about to discover which. Before we begin Lena's dangerous journey from invisible maid to the one woman who could bring a crime empire to its knees, please take a moment to like this video and comment below with your city. I love seeing how far these stories travel around the world. Now, let's step into a mansion where silence is survival, and one woman's presence will change everything. What kisi? The contract Lena Carter signed didn't mention the bloodstains. It outlined wages, $15 an hour, cash, no taxes. It specified hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days weekly. It detailed duties, cleaning, laundry, discretion required. But nowhere in the crisp legal language did it explain why the previous maid's room still smelled faintly of jasmine perfume, or why Lena's new employer conducted the interview through a thick mahogany door, his face never once visible. You understand the requirements? The voice carried the texture of expensive whiskey and cold authority. No guests, no photographs, no questions about what you see or don't see in this house. Lena stared at the door, her fingers gripping the strap of her threadbare purse. Behind her, the estate manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Chen, who'd escorted her through a labyrinth of security checkpoints, waited with the patience of someone accustomed to watching desperate people make impossible choices. The choice itself was simple mathematics. Lena owed $43,000 to people who'd stopped sending reminder notices and started sending men with dead eyes and blunt instructions. Her mother's cancer treatment had consumed everything: savings, credit, hope. The medical bills arrived like executioners, and the legitimate jobs Lena qualified for paid barely enough to cover interest on loans taken from increasingly dangerous sources. $15 an hour. $7,200 a month. In 6 months, she could clear the principal. In 8, she might reclaim her life. I understand, Lena said to the closed door. You'll live on the premises. 3rd floor, east wing. Meals provided. Your room is your sanctuary, the only place in this house where you're permitted privacy. Everywhere else, you're a pair of hands, not a person. Do you understand the distinction? The words should have insulted her. Instead, they offered something Lena hadn't expected: honesty. This wasn't a job that would pretend she mattered. It was transactional, clean in its cruelty. Yes. Mrs. Chen will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow at dawn. The door never opened. The interview concluded with Lena still staring at polished wood, wondering what kind of man conducted business like a priest in a confessional, hearing everything, revealing nothing. Mrs. Chen's hand touched her elbow, firm but not unkind. This way, Miss Carter. 1. The estate sprawled across 12 acres of manicured wilderness, surrounded by walls that resembled fortifications more than fencing. Security cameras studded every corner like mechanical eyes. The main house itself was a fortress disguised as elegance, stone and steel dressed in ivy and artful landscaping. Lena's room surprised her. She'd expected a closet with a cot. Instead, she found a genuine bedroom with crown molding, a queen-size bed draped in white linens, and windows overlooking gardens that glowed amber in the late afternoon sun. A small bathroom connected to the bedroom, stocked with toiletries still in their packaging. Mr. Kane believes his staff should live with dignity, Mrs. Chen explained, setting Lena's single suitcase on a cedar chest. Your dignity ends at that door. Beyond it, you follow the rules without exception. What happened to the last maid? The question escaped before Lena could cage it. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Warning or sympathy, Lena couldn't determine which. She asked too many questions. Don't make the same mistake. That night, Lena lay in sheets that smelled of lavender and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. Through the walls, she heard nothing. No voices, no footsteps, no evidence of life beyond her room. The silence pressed against her ears like water pressure, deep and absolute. She thought about her mother's grave, 3 months cold. She thought about the men who'd visited her apartment, their politeness more terrifying than threats. She thought about the moment she'd realized that legitimate society had built walls around people like her, walls disguised as credit scores and employment gaps and addresses in the wrong zip codes. Victor Kane's mansion had literal walls. But at least here, the terms were explicit. Lena closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Dawn arrived with Mrs. Chen's knock at 5:45 a.m. Uniform in the closet. Breakfast in the staff kitchen at 5:50. Work begins at 6 sharp. The uniform was simple: black dress, white apron, comfortable shoes. Lena dressed quickly, braided her dark hair into submission, and descended to the staff kitchen where 2 other employees waited in silence. A groundskeeper named Marcus, built like a retired linebacker, nodded once. A cook named Yuki, compact and efficient, slid a plate of eggs toward Lena without comment. They ate without conversation. The message was clear. This wasn't a workplace that encouraged camaraderie. At 6 a.m. precisely, Mrs. Chen distributed assignments from a leather-bound ledger. Marcus, North Perimeter and Garage Detail. Yuki, meal preparation as scheduled. Miss Carter, second floor, library, sitting rooms, and guest suites. You'll find supply carts outside each section. Lena memorized the instructions and climbed the service stairs to the second floor. The house revealed itself in pieces, rooms furnished with the kind of casual wealth that signaled old money or successful crime. Original artwork lined hallways, rugs that probably cost more than Lena's mother's entire medical debt cushioned her footsteps. Everything gleamed with the maintenance of people paid to keep beauty perfect. The library stopped her breath. Floor-to-ceiling shelves climbed toward a frescoed ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes arranged by some system Lena couldn't decipher. A mahogany desk commanded the room's center, its surface empty except for a single lamp with a green glass shade. Lena began dusting, her movements careful and methodical. She'd cleaned houses before, during college, before her mother's diagnosis had detonated her life. The work came back to her easily, the rhythm of it, the meditative quality of making chaos into order. She was polishing the desk's surface when she noticed the photograph. It sat face down in the desk's shallow drawer, partially visible where the drawer hadn't quite closed. Lena's hand hovered over it. The rules echoed in her memory, no curiosity. But her fingers had already grasped the frame's edge, already turned it over. The photograph showed a young boy, maybe 8 years old, standing between 2 adults who must have been his parents. The boy's smile was genuine, unguarded, nothing like the cold authority of the voice behind the mahogany door. But his eyes were unmistakable. Even in childhood, they carried intensity that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Admiring the decor, Lena's heart detonated. She spun, the photograph clattering to the desktop. A man stood in the library's entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that looked hand-tailored. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from sharp angles and hard experience. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her. Gray as winter storms, they assessed Lena with the same intensity the child in the photograph had possessed. Victor Kane had to be. I'm sorry, Mr. Kane, I was just... Lena's words tangled in her throat. He moved into the room with the fluid confidence of a predator in familiar territory. Each step was deliberate, controlled. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that Lena could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. You were just what, Miss Carter? His voice matched the one from the interview, whiskey and winter. Following the rules? Because the rules explicitly forbid curiosity about things that don't concern you. Lena's hands trembled. She clasped them together, trying to steady herself. It was an accident. The drawer was open and Accidents are what undisciplined people call their choices. Victor reached past her, his arm brushing her shoulder as he retrieved the photograph. He studied it for a moment, his expression unreadable. My parents. Dead 26 years. Car accident, or so the police report claimed. The information felt like a test. Lena didn't know what response he expected, so she gave him truth. I'm sorry for your loss. Victor's gaze shifted from the photograph to her face. He studied her with the intensity of someone reading a contract's fine print, searching for loopholes and liabilities. Sorry, such an inadequate word, isn't it? We use it for everything from genuine tragedy to minor inconvenience. It becomes meaningless through overuse. Yes, sir. Lena didn't know what else to say. You're different from the last one. Victor set the photograph face down in the drawer and closed it with deliberate care. She was curious too, but she tried to hide it. You're either more honest or more foolish. I haven't decided which. I'll follow the rules, Mr. Kane. It won't happen again. Won't it? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. People always say that. They genuinely believe they can cage their nature through willpower alone. But curiosity is like hunger. You can ignore it, but it never truly disappears. He moved toward the library's door, then paused. Mrs. Chen mentioned you have debts, dangerous ones. Lena's blood chilled. That's not relevant to my work here. Everything is relevant when you live under my roof. Victor turned back, his gray eyes pinning her in place. The men you borrowed from, they work for someone who works for someone who occasionally does business with me. Your debt was purchased last night. You now owe me $43,000 instead of them. The room tilted. Lena gripped the desk's edge, her knuckles whitening. What? Don't look so terrified. The terms are better. No interest, no violence. You work, you receive wages, 30% of which will be automatically deducted for debt repayment. In roughly 18 months, you'll be free. Lena's mind reeled. Why would you do that? Because men who threaten to kill people over debt are inefficient. Dead debtors can't repay what they owe. This way, I secure a motivated employee, and you sleep without wondering if tonight is when they'll make good on their threats. Victor's expression remained neutral, as if he'd just discussed weather rather than her life. Call it pragmatism. I didn't ask you to. No, you didn't, which is why it's not a favor. It's a business transaction. He moved to leave again, then added without turning. Finish the library. And Miss Carter, the next time you're curious about something in this house, ask yourself if the answer is worth your life. Usually it isn't. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, leaving Lena alone with her racing heart and the sudden, terrifying understanding that she'd become something more complicated than an employee. She'd become an investment. The days that followed established a rhythm that felt like breathing underwater, necessary but never quite natural. Lena woke before dawn, dressed in her uniform, consumed breakfast in silence with Marcus and Yuki. Mrs. Chen distributed assignments with the precision of a general deploying troops. Lena cleaned rooms that seemed to exist in states of perpetual perfection, erasing the minimal evidence that humans occupied these spaces. She learned the house's geography, the public rooms on the first floor where Victor occasionally entertained guests Lena never saw directly, the private quarters on the third floor that remained off limits, the second floor's transitional spaces where Lena spent most of her time. She learned to move like a ghost. When she heard footsteps, she melted into alcoves or service corridors. When voices approached, she became stillness itself. The house operated on the principle that staff should be functionally invisible, present enough to maintain order, absent enough to preserve the illusion that wealth maintained itself. Victor Kane himself appeared randomly, unexpectedly, like a storm system that followed no predictable pattern. Lena would be polishing silver in the dining room and suddenly sense his presence, a shift in air pressure, a subtle change in the quality of silence. She'd look up to find him watching her from the doorway, his gray eyes evaluating something she couldn't name. He never spoke during these moments. He simply watched, then departed as silently as he'd arrived. He's testing you, Yuki said one morning, breaking her usual silence as they prepared for the day. The cook's accent carried the musical quality of her Japanese heritage. Seeing if you'll panic, seeing if you'll run. Testing me for what? Lena asked. Yuki's expression was knowing, to see if you're strong enough to stay invisible. Most people can't handle being seen and ignored simultaneously. It breaks something in them. Lena thought about that as she worked. Being invisible should have been easy. She'd spent her entire adult life feeling unseen by systems and institutions that processed people like data rather than human beings. But Victor's attention was different. When he looked at her, she felt hyper-visible, as if he could see through her skin to the architecture of her thoughts. It was violation and validation simultaneously. 3 weeks into her employment, Lena was cleaning one of the second-floor sitting rooms when she heard shouting from somewhere below. Male voices raised in anger, one she recognized as Victor's, the other unfamiliar. The rules said to ignore what didn't concern her. Lena tried. She focused on dusting the mantelpiece, on polishing the mirror above it. But the voices escalated, and then something shattered, glass meeting stone with explosive finality. "You're making a mistake, Victor." The unfamiliar voice carried the sharp edges of desperation. "Roman won't forget this. He won't. Roman forgets I own 70% of his distribution network." Victor's voice was cold enough to frost windows. "He forgets because remembering would require him to admit he's not the power he pretends to be. You can remind him, or I can. Choose." Silence followed. Then footsteps, hurried, retreating. A door slammed with enough force that the sitting room's chandelier trembled. Lena stood frozen, her dustcloth suspended mid-wipe. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. A young woman in a maid's uniform, eyes too wide, fear written across features she barely recognized anymore. The door to the sitting room opened. Victor stood there, his suit jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. A thin cut marked his left hand, blood welling in a clean line across his palm. He held a handkerchief against it, the white fabric blooming red. "I need the first aid kit from the library," he said, his voice leveled despite the blood. "The large one, mahogany box, bottom shelf behind the desk." Lena's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She managed a nod. "Quickly, Miss Carter. I don't employ you to stand decoratively." The sharpness in his tone broke her paralysis. Lena dropped the dustcloth and ran, her comfortable shoes silent on the carpeted hallways. She burst into the library, found the mahogany box exactly where he'd described, and ran back. Victor had seated himself in one of the sitting room's leather chairs. He'd removed the handkerchief, revealing a cut that looked deeper than Lena had initially thought. Clean but serious, the kind that needed stitches. "You should go to a hospital," Lena said, setting the first aid kit on the side table. "I should do many things." Victor's gray eyes found hers. "I rarely do what I should. Open the kit." Lena's hand shook as she complied. Inside, she found supplies that belonged in an emergency room: suture thread, surgical needles, antiseptic, local anesthetic. "You want me to? I can't. I'm not qualified to." "I've done it myself before, but using my non-dominant hand makes a mess of it." He extended his injured hand toward her, palm up, blood still flowing. "You're either capable or you're not, Miss Carter. Decide quickly." The command in his voice activated some buried competency Lena didn't know she possessed. She'd watched her mother's nurses work, had absorbed through desperate attention the mechanics of wound care. Her hand steadied as she retrieved the antiseptic. "This will hurt," she warned. "Everything does." "Begin." Lena cleaned the wound with antiseptic-soaked gauze, her touch as gentle as she could manage. Victor's expression remained neutral, though she saw his jaw tighten. She applied local anesthetic, waited the recommended time, then threaded the surgical needle with hands that had stopped shaking. 6 stitches should close it, she murmured, more to herself than him. Then use 6. Victor watched her face rather than her hands. "You're steadier than you look." "My mother was sick for 2 years. I learned to be steady." "Was?" "She died 3 months ago." Lena focused on the first stitch, her movements careful and deliberate. "Cancer. We fought it until fighting became cruelty. I'm sorry for your loss." The words, her own words from the library, returned to her now, made Lena look up. Victor's expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes suggested he understood the inadequacy of the phrase while still meaning it. "Thank you," Lena said quietly, returning to her work. They didn't speak as she completed the remaining stitches. Lena worked with concentration that pushed everything else aside. The shouting she'd heard, the blood, the strange intimacy of touching Victor Kane's skin. When she tied off the final stitch and applied a clean bandage, her hands were rock steady. "Where did you learn medical technique?" Victor asked. "I didn't. I just watched people who knew what they were doing and tried to remember." Lena began cleaning up the supplies, disposing of bloodied gauze in the kit's designated compartment. "You really should see a real doctor. Infection risk? nerve damage. I appreciate your concern, Miss Carter, but I have doctors who make house calls and sign whatever paperwork I require. This, he flexed his bandaged hand, testing the stitches, is sufficient for now. Lena closed the first aid kit. What happened? The question violated every rule she'd been given. But sitting here with Victor's blood still wet on her fingers, pretending she hadn't heard the confrontation felt absurd. Victor's laugh was dark and brief. Curiosity again. You really can't help yourself, can you? You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. A business associate forgot the boundaries of our relationship. I reminded him with a champagne flute. Victor stood, rolling his sleeves down over the bandage. He left bleeding and enlightened. I consider that a successful negotiation. Is that what you call it? Negotiation? What would you call it? He moved closer until Lena had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Conflict resolution? Asset protection? The semantics of violence are endlessly debatable, Miss Carter, but the results speak clearly. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should step back, restore the proper distance between employer and employee. But her feet seemed rooted to the carpet, her body refusing the wisdom her mind offered. You're not afraid of me, Victor observed. Why? The question surprised her into honesty. Because you bought my debt instead of collecting it. Because you could have fired me for touching that photograph, but you didn't. Because, she hesitated, then finished, because I think you're scarier when you're quiet than when you're bleeding. Victor's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but something warmer than his usual neutrality. Perceptive. Most people mistake volume for danger. They never see the real threats coming. He reached past her to retrieve his suit jacket from the chair's arm. The movement brought him close enough that Lena could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the faint scar along his jawline that makeup or beard might usually hide. Return to your duties, Miss Carter. He shrugged into the jacket with practiced ease despite the injured hand. And the next time you hear something you shouldn't, remember that ignorance is a form of protection. Knowing too much in my world is how invisible people become permanently absent. He left the sitting room without looking back. Lena stood alone, surrounded by the aftermath of unexpected intimacy. Bloody gauze, scattered medical supplies, the lingering scent of antiseptic and expensive cologne. Her hands trembled now, adrenaline finally catching up with her. She'd just stitched a wound for a crime boss who'd bought her debt and warned her about dangers she couldn't fully comprehend. She'd violated rules and survived. She'd been seen, truly seen, by a man who existed in shadows. And the most terrifying part was the small, shameful corner of her mind that had enjoyed his proximity, his attention, the feeling of being essential rather than invisible. Lena cleaned up the medical supplies with shaking hands and tried to convince herself that what she felt was just adrenaline. She almost believed it. The library became Lena's assignment by unspoken arrangement. Mrs. Chen never explicitly changed her duties, but somehow Lena found herself dispatched there daily, maintaining a room that required minimal maintenance. She began to understand it was a message. Victor wanted her there. The why remained unclear, but Lena had learned that questioning his decisions led nowhere productive. She used the time to read. The library's collection was vast and eclectic, philosophy beside pulp fiction, military history adjacent to poetry. Lena would dust for 20 minutes, then allow herself an hour with whatever volume caught her attention, always returning it precisely to its original position. One afternoon, she pulled down a collection of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and found marginalia in the columns, notes in sharp, angular handwriting that had to be Victor's. Next to a passage about accepting what cannot be changed, someone had written, "Acceptance is surrender wearing philosophy's mask." Lena traced the words with her finger, trying to imagine Victor Kane, a man who'd built an empire on control, wrestling with Stoic philosophy about releasing control. The contradiction fascinated her. "Do you agree with him?" Victor's voice came from the doorway. Lena jumped, nearly dropping the book. "I didn't hear you come in." "I know, you were too absorbed in reading my thoughts." He moved into the library, hands in his pockets, his bandaged hand barely visible beneath his suit sleeve. "So? Do you think acceptance is surrender?" Lena looked at the marginalia, then at Victor. "I think sometimes they're the same thing, and sometimes surrendering is the only way to survive." Spoken like someone who's had to surrender often. "Haven't you?" Lena surprised herself with the boldness of the question. Victor's smile was slight, almost invisible. Never. Which is why I wrote that note, to remind myself that my philosophy might be flawed. He gestured to the book. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor who understood power's limitations. I'm just a criminal who refuses to accept mine. You're more than that. The words escaped before Lena could cage them. Am I? Tell me, Miss Carter, what do you see when you look at me? The question felt like walking onto ice that might crack with any wrong move. Lena met his gaze and chose truth over safety. I see someone who built walls so high, he forgot what it's like to exist without them. Silence filled the library. Victor's expression was unreadable, his gray eyes searching hers for something Lena couldn't identify. You should be more careful with your observations, he said finally. Accuracy can be dangerous. You asked. I did. He moved to the window, staring out at the manicured gardens below. Your 18-month contract, how much have you paid down? The shift in topic gave Lena whiplash. About $4,000. Why? Because I'm considering a modification to our arrangement. Victor turned from the window, his attention fully on her. I have a function to attend next week. Political donors, business associates, the sort of people who expect a certain presentation. I need someone to accompany me. Lena's heart stuttered. You want me to be your date? I want you to be present. The distinction matters. His tone was businesslike, clinical. You'll be paid double for the evening, and I'll deduct an additional $5,000 from your debt. All you have to do is stay beside me, look pleasant, and discourage conversation from people I'd rather avoid. I'm a maid. I don't know how to... You know how to be invisible when necessary and present when required. That's more valuable than most people's social skills. Victor's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not, Miss Carter. I'm asking you to be exactly what you are. Someone intelligent enough to navigate complex situations without making them worse. Lena wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed that accepting would complicate things beyond repair, but $5,000 was nearly 4 months of debt repayment. And beneath the practical considerations, something deeper stirred. Curiosity about Victor's world beyond the mansion, about who he became when surrounded by the powerful rather than the invisible. What would I wear? She asked. I'll have something appropriate sent to your room. Victor's smile was brief but genuine. Is that a yes? It's a yes. Good. He moved toward the library's exit, then paused. And Miss Carter? When we're at the function, you're not my employee. You're my guest. Act accordingly. After he left, Lena stood alone in the library, holding a book of Stoic philosophy and wondering what she'd just agreed to. She had a feeling she was about to discover that some walls, once crossed, became impossible to rebuild. The dress arrived 2 days before the function. Mrs. Chen delivered it personally, carrying a garment bag with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. Mr. Kane has impeccable taste, she said, laying the bag across Lena's bed. Don't embarrass him by looking uncomfortable in it. After Mrs. Chen departed, Lena unzipped the bag with trembling fingers. The dress was midnight blue, almost black, with a neckline that suggested elegance without revealing too much. The fabric felt like liquid against her skin when she tried it on. Silk or something equally expensive, cut to follow her figure with precision that indicated Victor had somehow known her exact measurements. Lena stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, poised, elegant, nothing like the ghost who cleaned in shadows. The transformation was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. A knock interrupted her examination. Come in, she called. Victor entered, then stopped. His gray eyes traveled from her face to the dress and back again, his expression unreadable. It fits perfectly. How did you know my size? I notice things, Miss Carter. It's how I've survived this long. He moved closer, circling her slowly, assessing her the way a jeweler might examine a stone's cut. You'll need shoes. Mrs. Chen will handle that. And jewelry. Nothing ostentatious. Simple earrings, perhaps a bracelet. I don't own any jewelry. I'm aware. That's why I'll provide it. He stopped in front of her, close enough that Lena could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. The function is tomorrow evening. We'll leave at 7. There will be approximately 300 guests, politicians, business people, criminals pretending to be legitimate and legitimate people pretending not to be criminals. You'll meet several of my associates. What should I say to them? As little as possible. When someone asks how we met, tell them we have mutual friends. When they ask what you do, tell them you're between careers. When they ask anything genuinely personal, excuse yourself to the restroom. Victor's hand lifted, his fingers adjusting the dress's shoulder slightly. And if a man named Roman Hale approaches you, you walk immediately back to my side. Understand? The name sent ice through Lena's veins. Roman Hale. The man from the argument? His employer, actually. Roman is more dangerous than the fool who bled on my carpet. Victor's expression hardened. He's been testing boundaries lately, trying to determine my vulnerabilities. I'd rather not give him any new information. Then why bring me at all? Won't that make you a target? Potentially. Victor's honesty was brutal and somehow reassuring. But you're already in my house, already on my payroll, already visible to anyone paying attention. Hiding you would signal that you matter. Bringing you signals that you're irrelevant, just another date, easily replaced. Well, Lena processed that. You're using me as a decoy. I'm using you as exactly what you appear to be, someone I find interesting enough to bring to a tedious event. His fingers fell away from her shoulder. The fact that your presence might confuse my enemies is simply good strategy. And if they're not confused, if they think I actually matter to you, Victor's smile was dark. Then they'll have made an incorrect assumption. And incorrect assumptions are how empires fall, Miss Carter. I've built mine by ensuring my enemies always miscalculate. He moved to leave, then turned back one final time. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be exhausting, even for invisible people pretending to be seen. After he left, Lena stood in front of the mirror, wearing a dress worth more than 3 months of her salary, and tried to convince herself she was just a decoy. But she'd seen the way Victor looked at her. And she knew that men who claimed women were irrelevant didn't buy them dresses that fit like second skins or warn them about specific enemies by name. Lena was becoming something more dangerous than a maid in Victor Kane's fortress. She was becoming someone he noticed. And in a world built on invisibility and violence, being noticed by Victor Kane meant the rules had already changed. She just didn't know yet if that change would save her or destroy her. The limousine arrived at 7 p.m. precisely, black and gleaming like a predator's skin. Lena watched from her bedroom window as it rolled through the estate's gates, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The midnight blue dress hugged her body with uncomfortable intimacy, and the diamond earrings Victor had sent via Mrs. Chen felt heavy as secrets against her neck. She'd spent the afternoon trying to prepare herself, rehearsing polite deflections, practicing walking in heels that cost more than her mother's funeral, breathing through the panic that kept rising in her chest like floodwater. None of it helped. She was still just Lena Carter, daughter of a dead woman and debtor to a man who bought people the way others bought furniture. A knock on her door made her jump. "It's time, Miss Carter." Mrs. Chen's voice carried its usual efficiency, but when Lena opened the door, the older woman's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You look beautiful. Don't let anyone make you forget that." The unexpected kindness nearly broke Lena's composure. "Thank you. And remember, you belong there as much as any of them. Rich people are just poor people with better accountants and worse consciences." Mrs. Chen's smile was brief but genuine. "Mr. Kane is waiting in the foyer." Lena descended the main staircase for the first time since arriving at the estate, her hands sliding along the banister for balance. The heels made each step precarious, but she forced herself to move with something resembling confidence. Victor stood at the bottom, checking his watch with the casual impatience of someone accustomed to punctuality. He wore a tuxedo that looked hand-tailored, his dark hair swept back, his gray eyes sharp as glass. When he looked up and saw her, something flickered across his features. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. It vanished too quickly for Lena to identify. "You're ready." Not a question, an observation. "As I'll ever be." Lena reached the bottom step, and Victor extended his hand. She took it, his palm warm against her fingers, his grip steady as he guided her off the final stair. "Remember the rules," he said quietly, his mouth close to her ear. "Minimal conversation. Stay visible. Avoid Roman Hale. If anything makes you uncomfortable, touch your left earring. I'll extract us immediately. Extract us? You make it sound like a military operation. Social functions among criminals are exactly that, tactical exercises disguised as parties. Victor's hand settled at the small of her back, guiding her toward the door. The only difference is that the weapons are words instead of bullets. Usually. The limousine's interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Lena slid across the seat, hyper-aware of Victor's proximity as he settled beside her. The privacy screen was up, isolating them from the driver, creating an intimacy that made Lena's pulse accelerate. Nervous? Victor asked. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps people sharp. Overconfidence is how mistakes happen. He retrieved a crystal decanter from the console, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. Whiskey. It'll steady your nerves without impairing your judgment. Lena accepted the glass, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The whiskey burned pleasantly down her throat, warmth spreading through her chest. I've never been to anything like this before. Neither had I, once. My first function, I was 19, still rough around the edges, still angry at everything. Victor's gaze turned distant, focused on memories rather than the present. I watched men in expensive suits discuss art and politics while running empires built on suffering. I realized that night that power doesn't change people. It just reveals what they were always willing to do. What were you willing to do? Victor's attention snapped back to her, his gray eyes studying her face with unsettling intensity. Everything. Anything. Whatever was necessary to ensure I'd never be powerless again. He took a slow sip of whiskey. Does that frighten you? Yes. Lena met his gaze without flinching, but probably not in the way you expect. Then how? It frightens me because I understand it. The confession escaped before Lena could stop it. When my mother was dying, when the bills kept coming and the treatment stopped working, I would have done anything for more time. Stolen, lied, worse. The only thing that stopped me was knowing she'd be disappointed. Victor's expression shifted. Not quite sympathy, but recognition. Powerlessness is a cage that feels like safety until you realize the bars are made of other people's choices. Once you see that, you can never unsee it. Is that why you built all this? The estate, the empire, all of it's just bigger bars? Perceptive. Victor finished his whiskey, setting the empty glass aside. The difference is that I control the cage now. I decide who enters, who leaves, who gets hurt. That's not freedom, Miss Carter. But it's close enough. The limousine slowed, turning into a circular drive lined with expensive cars and security personnel. Through the tinted windows, Lena saw a mansion that made Victor's estate look modest. White columns, sprawling wings, lights blazing from every window. We're here. Victor's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through her own. From this moment forward, you're not my employee. You're someone I chose to bring. Act like you belong and everyone will assume you do. And if they don't, then I'll remind them why assuming things about me is dangerous. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. Ready? Lena took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. No, but let's go anyway. The door opened and Victor stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand. Lena took it, emerging into a world of flashbulbs and murmured conversations. Security personnel lined the drive, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses despite the evening darkness. Guests moved in clusters toward the mansion's entrance, their laughter carrying the forced quality of people performing enjoyment rather than experiencing it. Victor's hand settled at her back again, proprietary and protective simultaneously. They moved through the crowd and Lena felt eyes tracking their progress, assessing, calculating, judging. She kept her expression neutral, her posture straight, channeling every moment she'd ever spent being invisible and reversing it into deliberate visibility. Inside, the mansion revealed itself as a monument to excess. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, artwork that probably belonged in museums. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played something classical in the corner, nearly drowned out by conversation. Victor Kane. A man materialized beside them, silver-haired, distinguished, with the smile of a shark who'd learned to imitate humans. I heard rumors you'd actually attend this year. Usually you send regrets. Daniel, Victor's tone was polite but cool. I decided recent events warranted a personal appearance. Daniel's gaze shifted to Lena, his assessment frank and invasive. And who is this lovely creature? Lena Carter. Victor's hand tightened slightly at her back. Lena, this is Daniel Frost. He owns half the construction permits in the city and most of the inspectors who issue them. Charming as always, Victor. Daniel extended his hand to Lena. Miss Carter, a pleasure. How did you and our reclusive friend meet? Lena shook his hand, remembering Victor's instructions. Mutual friends, small world, smaller circles. Indeed. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, searching for additional information. When Lena offered nothing more, he smiled. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. Victor, we should speak later about the waterfront development. There are complications. There always are. I'll find you. Victor guided Lena away before Daniel could probe further. Once they were out of earshot, he murmured, Well done. Vague enough to be uninformative, specific enough to sound legitimate. He didn't believe me. He's not supposed to. He's supposed to wonder. Wondering keeps him distracted. Victor snagged 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter, handing one to Lena. The goal tonight isn't to convince anyone of anything, it's to make them uncertain about what they think they know. They moved through the crowd, and Victor introduced Lena to a parade of people whose names blurred together. Politicians with practiced handshakes, businessmen with calculating eyes, women who smiled with their mouths while their eyes measured Lena for weaknesses. Each interaction followed the same pattern: polite greeting, minimal information, strategic retreat. Lena began to understand the function wasn't about celebration or networking. It was reconnaissance disguised as socialization. Everyone was gathering intelligence, testing alliances, identifying vulnerabilities. You're doing well, Victor said during a brief moment of privacy near the mansion's expansive windows. Better than expected, actually. You expected me to fall apart? I expected you to be overwhelmed. There's a difference. He studied her face, something like approval in his expression. You adapt quickly. That's rare. I've had practice. My mother's illness taught me that survival means adjusting to circumstances faster than circumstances can destroy you. Lena sipped her champagne, the bubbles sharp on her tongue. Is this what your life is always like? Performing for people you don't trust? Every moment of every day. Victor's gaze swept the room, cataloging threats and opportunities with practiced efficiency. The only variable is whether the performance happens in tuxedos or behind closed doors with weapons visible. That sounds exhausting. It is, but exhaustion is preferable to complacency. Complacent people die young in my world. A shift in the crowd's energy made Victor tense. Lena felt it too, a change in air pressure, like weather turning. Conversations quieted slightly, and people moved with subtle choreography that suggested someone important had arrived. Victor's jaw tightened. Roman Hale, 3 o'clock, near the terrace entrance. Lena followed his gaze and saw him, tall, lean, with dark hair and features that would have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He moved through the crowd like a knife through silk, people parting unconsciously to accommodate him. Unlike Victor, whose power felt controlled and deliberate, Roman radiated something more volatile, dangerous in the way of fire rather than ice. Should we leave? Lena asked quietly. No. Leaving would signal concern. We stay, we're visible, we demonstrate indifference. Victor's hand moved to her waist, pulling her slightly closer. He'll approach eventually. When he does, let me handle the conversation. You're window dressing, remember? The word should have stung. Instead, Lena felt relieved. Being invisible suddenly seemed safer than whatever game was about to unfold. Roman's path through the room was deliberate. He stopped to greet people, shook hands, laughed at jokes Lena couldn't hear. But his trajectory was clear. He was coming toward them with the inevitability of gravity. Victor. Roman's voice was smooth, cultured, completely at odds with the violence Victor had described. What a surprise to see you here. I thought you preferred your fortress to actual civilization. Roman. Victor's tone matched his, polite, empty, dangerous. Still compensating for insecurity with aggressive networking, I see. Roman's smile didn't reach his eyes. And still hiding behind walls and wondering why the world moves on without you. His gaze shifted to Lena, and she felt physically assessed. Though I see you've acquired some new decoration. How refreshing. Lena Carter, Victor said before Lena could respond. Lena, Roman Hale. He owns several legitimate businesses and substantially more illegitimate ones. The ratio shifts depending on who's investigating him. Charming introduction. As always, Roman extended his hand to Lena. Miss Carter, a pleasure. Tell me, how does one become associated with Victor Kane? He's notoriously selective about his company. Lena shook his hand briefly, her skin crawling at the contact. We have mutual interests. How delightfully vague. Roman's fingers lingered a moment too long before releasing her hand. You'll have to forgive Victor's tendency towards secrecy. He mistakes isolation for strength. It's a common confusion among people who've been hurt. Victor's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the tension radiating from his body. And you mistake aggression for confidence, Roman. It's a common confusion among people who know they're irrelevant but refuse to accept it. The air between them crystallized into something sharp enough to draw blood. Around them, conversations continued, but Lena sensed people paying attention peripherally, monitoring the confrontation without appearing to. Roman's smile widened. Irrelevant. That's an interesting assessment from someone whose distribution network I could cripple with 3 phone calls. You could try. The resulting casualties would be instructive, though probably not for you. Victor's hand moved slightly on Lena's waist, not quite possessive, but definitely territorial. Was there something you wanted, Roman? Or are you just demonstrating that you still haven't learned the difference between confidence and suicide? I wanted to see what bait you'd use this time. Roman's eyes locked on Lena, and she felt stripped naked by his assessment. Pretty. Younger than your usual type. Nervous, but hiding it well. Tell me, Miss Carter, does Victor warn his disposable companions what happens when they stop being useful? Or does he prefer surprise? Lena's fear evaporated, replaced by anger. Does anyone warn you what happens when you assume women are too stupid to understand the games men play? Or do you prefer learning through restraining orders? Roman blinked, surprised. Beside her, Lena felt Victor's silent laugh more than heard it. She has claws, Roman said, his tone shifting to something more genuinely interested. How unexpected. And here I thought you'd chosen another decorative piece of furniture, Victor. Your thoughts are consistently wrong. It's one of your more reliable qualities. Victor's voice carried finality. If you'll excuse us, we have people to see who don't bore us to violence. He guided Lena away, his hand firm at her back. They moved through the crowd toward the terrace, and Lena felt Roman's eyes tracking them. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline making her fingers tremble. You shouldn't have engaged him, Victor said quietly, once they reached the terrace's relative privacy. I specifically told you to stay silent. He called me disposable furniture. Was I supposed to smile and thank him? Yes. Because now he knows you have personality, intelligence, spirit, all the things that make you memorable instead of forgettable. Victor turned her to face him, his gray eyes intense. I brought you as a decoy, Miss Carter. Decoys work best when they're bland, unremarkable, easily dismissed. You just made yourself interesting to one of the most dangerous men in this city. Lena's anger flared hotter. Then maybe you should have brought actual furniture instead of a human being with self-respect. Maybe I should have. Victor's jaw tightened, but I didn't, and now we deal with the consequences. Which are what exactly? He knows I exist? He already knew that the moment we walked in together. He knew you existed. Now he knows you matter. There's a difference. Victor released her, stepping back, creating distance. Roman doesn't waste energy on things that don't matter. By responding to him, by defending yourself, you signaled that you have value worth protecting. The implication settled over Lena like ice water. You wanted him to dismiss me, to think I was nothing. I wanted him to think you were irrelevant to me personally, a date, a distraction, someone I'd forget by next week. Victor's expression was unreadable. Instead, you defended yourself with the kind of fire that indicates I might actually care what happens to you. Do you? The question hung between them like smoke. Victor stared at her, and for the first time since Lena had met him, she saw uncertainty flicker across his features. "That's irrelevant," he said finally. "Then why are you angry?" "Because you've made yourself a target through impulse rather than strategy. Because Roman will now investigate you, discover your debts, your history, your mother's death, every vulnerability you possess, and he'll use them if he thinks hurting you might hurt me." Lena's breath caught. "Would it? Hurt you?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "You really don't understand the game, do you? It doesn't matter if it would actually hurt me. What matters is whether Roman believes it would. Belief shapes action, and action gets people killed." "Then tell him the truth. Tell him I don't matter to you." "He wouldn't believe me now. Not after watching me pull you close when he approached. Not after seeing my reaction when he called you disposable." Victor's hand lifted, his fingers brushing her cheek in a gesture so gentle it contradicted everything he was saying. "I made a mistake bringing you here. I thought I could control the variables. I was wrong." The admission stunned Lena into silence. Victor Kane didn't seem like a man who acknowledged mistakes. "We're leaving," he said, his hand dropping away. "Stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone else. We'll exit through the garden and circle back to the car." "What about the people you needed to see?" "They're less important than getting you somewhere safe." Victor's expression hardened into the cold mask Lena recognized from their first meeting. "Move. Now!" They walked quickly through the terrace, descending steps into formal gardens lit by subtle landscape lighting. The party noise faded behind them, replaced by the sound of water fountains and Lena's heels clicking against stone pathways. "Victor, wait!" Lena grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to—" "Don't apologize for having self-respect. Apologize for not following instructions designed to keep you alive." His eyes bored into hers. "In my world, Miss Carter, pride is expensive. Sometimes it costs everything." "Then maybe your world needs better rules." "The world doesn't care what it needs. It is what it is." Victor pulled his phone from his pocket, texting rapidly. "The car will meet us at the east gate. Stay beside me." They continued through the gardens, and Lena's unease grew. The manicured paths felt too quiet, too isolated. The party was far enough behind them that screaming wouldn't bring help. A figure stepped from the shadows ahead. Victor stopped instantly, his body shifting into something harder, more dangerous. His hand moved to Lena's back, pushing her slightly behind him. "Leaving so soon?" Roman's voice carried through the darkness. "And here I thought we were just getting acquainted." "This is a private conversation, Roman. Walk away." Victor's tone promised violence. "Private? Out here? How romantic." Roman moved closer, and in the landscape lighting, Lena saw he wasn't alone. Two men flanked him, security or enforcers, built like walls and watching Victor with professional assessment. "I wanted to apologize to Miss Carter. I was rude earlier." "Apology noted. Goodbye." Victor's hand urged Lena backward. "I wasn't finished." Roman's smile was sharp. "You see, I did some quick research while you were making your dramatic exit. Lena Carter. Mother died of cancer 3 months ago. Debts to some very unpleasant people. Debts that mysteriously vanished right around the time she started working for you, Victor. That's not just employment, that's ownership." Lena's blood turned to ice. Victor's hand tightened at her back, his body coiled with restrained violence. "You're speculating," Victor said. "Badly." "Am I?" "Because ownership implies value, and value implies leverage." Roman's eyes locked on Lena. "Tell me, Miss Carter, does Victor keep you in that fortress willingly, or are you just another asset he's acquired?" "I'm there willingly." Lena's voice shook but held. "And I don't appreciate being discussed like I'm not here." There's that fire again. Roman's smile widened. "You know what I think? I think Victor found something rare. Someone with backbone who hasn't been broken yet. Someone who still believes there are rules, fairness, justice. How refreshing that must be for a man surrounded by corruption." "This conversation is over." Victor moved, pulling Lena with him, trying to go around Roman and his men. But Roman shifted, blocking their path. "One more thing. A friendly warning, really. Victor's protection only extends as far as his walls, Miss Carter. Beyond them, you're just another vulnerable woman in a dangerous world. Remember that. His hand shot out, faster than Lena expected, grabbing her wrist. The contact was brief, less than a second, but it sent electricity through her body. Not desire, fear. Victor's response was instantaneous. His fist connected with Roman's jaw with a sound like breaking wood. Roman staggered back, releasing Lena, his hand going to his face. The two enforcers moved forward, but Victor's voice stopped them. Touch her again, Roman, and I'll burn everything you've built. Every business, every property, every relationship. I'll reduce your empire to ash and scatter it where nothing grows. Roman straightened, blood trickling from his split lip, but he was smiling. There it is. The truth underneath the performance. She matters, Victor, and now everyone will know it. She's under my protection. That's all anyone needs to know. Victor's voice was cold enough to freeze blood. And my protection is absolute. Test it at your own risk. He pulled Lena away, moving fast through the gardens. Behind them, Lena heard Roman's laugh, dark, satisfied, victorious. They reached the east gate where the limousine waited, engine running. Victor practically shoved Lena inside, then climbed in after her, slamming the door. Drive, he barked at the driver. Now! The car lurched forward. Lena sat frozen, her wrist still tingling where Roman had grabbed her. Victor was a coiled spring beside her, rage radiating from his body in waves. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. Stop apologizing. Victor's voice was harsh. This isn't your fault. It's mine. I underestimated Roman's willingness to escalate. I thought bringing you would confuse him. Instead, it gave him exactly what he wanted, confirmation that I have weaknesses. I didn't ask you to protect me. No, you didn't. Which makes it worse. Victor finally looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes stole Lena's breath. You should have stayed invisible, Miss Carter. Hidden in the mansion, cleaning in shadows, safe behind my walls. But you couldn't help being seen, and now neither of us can pretend you don't matter. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither seemed ready to examine. What happens now? Lena asked. Now we adapt. Roman will make moves, probe for weaknesses, try to use you as leverage. I'll counter, protect, ensure he understands the cost of threatening what's mine. Victor's jaw tightened. And you'll stay inside the estate until this resolves. No more outings, no more risks. You're making me a prisoner. I'm keeping you alive. His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. There's a difference. They rode in silence the rest of the way, hands intertwined. Two people caught in a game neither had wanted to play, but both were now committed to finishing. When they reached the estate, Victor walked Lena to her room personally. At her door, he paused. Lock this. Don't open it for anyone except Mrs. Chen or me. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Roman will try to get to you. Phone calls, messages, maybe worse. Ignore everything. Trust nothing that doesn't come directly from me. Victor, I know. You're scared. You should be. His free hand lifted to her face, cupping her cheek. But I've never lost an asset I was determined to protect, and I'm very determined about you. Is that what I am? An asset? His smile was sad. I wish that's all you were. It would make this simpler. He released her hand and walked away, leaving Lena standing in her doorway with the lingering warmth of his touch on her skin and the terrifying understanding that everything had changed. She locked the door as instructed and leaned against it, her heart racing. Through the window, she could see the estate's walls, the security cameras, the guards Victor employed to keep the world at bay. For the first time since arriving, the walls didn't feel like protection. They felt like a cage. And Lena wasn't sure anymore whether she was being kept safe or simply kept. Sleep refused to come that night. Lena lay in bed watching shadows crawl across her ceiling, her mind replaying Roman's touch on her wrist, the cold calculation in his eyes, Victor's explosive violence when he'd struck him. The memory of Victor's hand on her face lingered like a brand, his words echoing in the darkness. I wish that's all you were. It would make this simpler. What did that mean? What was she becoming to him beyond an asset, beyond a maid whose debt he'd purchased? Dawn arrived with the usual knock from Mrs. Chen, but the older woman's expression was troubled when Lena opened the door. Mr. Kane wants to see you in his office, immediately. Mrs. Chen's voice was quieter than usual. And Miss Carter? Whatever happened last night has the entire house on edge. Security has doubled. The staff has been instructed to report any unusual activity. Be careful. Lena dressed quickly, her hands trembling as she buttoned her uniform. Victor's office was in the mansion's west wing, a part of the house she'd never entered. The territory felt forbidden, heavy with the weight of decisions made and orders given. A guard she didn't recognize stood outside the office door. He assessed Lena with professional detachment before knocking twice. Miss Carter, sir. Send her in. Victor's voice carried through the heavy wood. The office was exactly what Lena expected. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that commanded the room like a throne. But what surprised her were the monitors covering one wall, displaying security feeds from across the estate and beyond. She recognized the mansion's grounds, but other screens showed city streets, building entrances, locations she couldn't identify. Victor stood at the windows, his back to her, staring out at the estate's gardens. He'd discarded his suit jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle. The morning light outlined him in gold, but his posture radiated tension. Lock the door, he said, without turning. Lena complied, the click of the lock impossibly loud in the quiet office. You wanted to see me? Roman made his move. 3 hours ago. Victor turned and Lena saw exhaustion etched into his features. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. He sent flowers to your room with a note. Mrs. Chen intercepted them before they reached you. Ice flooded Lena's veins. What did the note say? Victor moved to his desk, retrieving a small card. He held it out to her, his jaw tight. Read it yourself. Lena took the card with shaking fingers. The handwriting was elegant, almost artistic. Dear Miss Carter, I apologize for any distress our meeting may have caused. A woman of your obvious intelligence deserves better than imprisonment disguised as protection. If you ever wish to discuss your options freely, I'm available. The cage may be gilded, but it's still a cage. Warmest regards, Roman Hale. The words made Lena's skin crawl. He's trying to manipulate me. He's trying to plant doubt. Victor took the card back, his fingers brushing hers. Roman's specialty is psychological warfare. He finds the fracture lines in relationships and applies pressure until everything shatters. The question is whether he's found yours. You think I'd actually contact him? I think you're smart enough to wonder if he has a point. Victor's gray eyes searched her face. You are in a cage, Lena. A beautiful one with comfortable accommodations and wages that pay down your debt. But you can't leave, can't make your own choices, can't exist beyond these walls without my permission. Roman is betting that eventually you'll resent that enough to listen to alternatives. The use of her first name, not Miss Carter, sent electricity through her. And if I do resent it, then you'd be justified. I bought your debt, confined you to my property, and dragged you into a war you didn't choose. Victor moved closer, close enough that Lena could smell cedar and smoke on his skin. But resenting your cage and trusting the man trying to steal you from it are different things. Roman doesn't want to free you, Lena. He wants to own you himself. The only question is whether you're naive enough to believe his performance. I'm not naive. Anger flared in Lena's chest. I know exactly what Roman is, but I also know what you are. You talk about protection, but you've never asked what I want. You make decisions about my life like I'm property you're safeguarding instead of a person with agency. Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Acknowledgement, maybe, or respect. You're right. I haven't asked. So I'm asking now. What do you want, Lena? The question hit her like a physical blow. What did she want? For months, survival had been her only goal, keeping her mother alive, paying debts, existing from one crisis to the next. Want had seemed like a luxury for people whose lives weren't controlled by desperation. I want to stop being afraid, Lena said finally. I want to make choices that matter. I want to exist as something more than a transaction between powerful men who see me as leverage. Then you want things I can't give you, Victor's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Because the moment you stopped being invisible, you became leverage whether I wanted that or not. Roman will use you to hurt me. Others will follow his example. And the only way to stop that is to either remove you from the equation entirely or ensure you're so well protected that attacking you becomes suicide. Those are the only options: disappear or become a prisoner. In my world, yes. Victor's hand lifted, his fingers tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, in a gesture so intimate it made Lena's breath catch. I could arrange for you to leave. New identity, new city, debt cleared, enough money to start over. You'd be free of me, free of Roman, free of all of this. It would take 48 hours to arrange. Hope and terror warred in Lena's chest. You'd actually let me go? If that's what you wanted. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, his touch impossibly gentle. But you need to understand what you'd be walking away from. Not just the debt forgiveness or the safety. You'd be walking away from this. His other hand settled at her waist, pulling her closer. From whatever this is becoming between us. Because I can't follow you into a normal life, Lena. I can't be the man who walks away from everything I've built. This world is all I know. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She was close enough to see the flecks of darker gray in Victor's eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. What is this becoming? Something dangerous. Something that makes me stupid and reckless. His forehead touched hers, his breath warm against her lips. Something I should walk away from, but can't seem to. Victor. The intercom on his desk crackled to life. Sir, we have a situation at the North Gate. Victor pulled back instantly, his expression shifting from vulnerable to controlled in a heartbeat. He moved to his desk, pressing the intercom button. Report. Unknown vehicle, 3 occupants. They're requesting to speak with you. Say it's about Roman Hale. Victor's jaw tightened. Weapons? Not visible, but they're not making any aggressive moves, waiting for your instructions. Put them in the South Conference Room. Full security presence. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Victor released the button and turned to Lena. Go to your room. Lock the door. Don't open it until I come for you personally. Who are they? Either Roman's people trying a different approach, or someone who thinks they can profit by playing us against each other. Victor was already moving, grabbing his suit jacket, checking something in his desk drawer that Lena couldn't see. Either way, you don't need to be visible for this conversation. You're protecting me again. I'm being strategic. There's a difference. But his eyes betrayed him, concern flickering across features he was trying to keep neutral. Please, Lena, just this once. Don't argue. The please undid her resistance. Lena nodded and moved toward the door. As she unlocked it, Victor's voice stopped her. Lena? She turned back. When this is over, when we've dealt with Roman and you're safe again, we're going to have a real conversation about what you want. Not what I think you should want, not what's strategic or safe. What you actually want. His expression was impossibly serious. And whatever you decide, I'll respect it, even if it means letting you go. Lena wanted to say something, but words tangled in her throat. She simply nodded and left, her mind reeling. Back in her room, she paced like a caged animal. The windows overlooked the North Gate, but from this distance, she couldn't see the vehicle or its occupants. Security personnel moved with increased urgency across the grounds, more than she'd ever seen active simultaneously. An hour passed. Then 2. Lena's imagination conjured increasingly terrible scenarios. Ambush. Violence. Victor bleeding out somewhere while she remained locked safely in her room. The knock, when it finally came, made her jump. Lena, it's me. Open the door. Victor's voice. Lena rushed to comply, throwing the door open. He looked tired but unharmed, his expression grim. We need to talk, somewhere private. This is private. Not private enough. Victor glanced down the hallway, then made a decision. May I come in? Lena stepped back, allowing him entry. Victor closed the door behind him, but didn't lock it, maintaining propriety even in crisis. He moved to her window, staring out at the grounds. The visitors were federal agents, he said finally. They're investigating Roman for a long list of crimes. Money laundering, racketeering, human trafficking. They wanted to know about my relationship with him, about any information I might have regarding his operations. Lena's stomach dropped. What did you tell them? The truth. That Roman and I are business rivals, that our relationship is adversarial, That I have no interest in his criminal enterprises because I have enough of my own to manage. Victor's smile was bitter. They already knew most of it. The visit was really about something else. What? You. Victor turned from the window, his gray eyes finding hers. They know Roman grabbed you last night. Security cameras at the venue caught it. They wanted to know if you'd be willing to testify about the encounter to provide evidence of his pattern of intimidation and assault. Fear crystallized in Lena's chest. Testify? Against Roman Hale? That was my reaction too. Victor moved closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. I told them absolutely not. That you're a private citizen who was inadvertently caught in a situation beyond your control, and that I wouldn't allow them to put a target on your back by making you a witness. Can you refuse on my behalf? Technically, no. They could subpoena you if they wanted, but they won't. His grip tightened slightly. Because I made it clear that if they pursued that route, I'd use every resource at my disposal to ensure their investigation collapsed. I'd burn evidence, intimidate witnesses, deploy lawyers who make Supreme Court justices look like public defenders. They understood the message. Lena stared at him, trying to process the casual way he'd just described obstructing justice. You'd really do that? Destroy a federal investigation? To keep you off Roman's kill list? Without hesitation. Victor's expression was utterly serious. You think testifying would be brave, would help bring a criminal to justice. But you don't understand how men like Roman operate. He'd have you killed before the trial even started. Not quickly, not mercifully. He'd make an example that would terrify anyone else who considered cooperating with authorities. So he just gets away with it? With everything? Welcome to reality, Lena. Bad people win frequently. Justice is a fairy tale we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. The truth is that power protects power, and the only thing that stops men like Roman is overwhelming force applied without mercy. Victor's hand slid from her shoulders to frame her face. I know that's not the answer you want. I know you believe there should be rules, consequences, fairness, but believing something doesn't make it true. Lena pulled away from his touch, anger surging through her. So what? I just hide here forever? Let you make all my decisions because the world is too dangerous for me to navigate alone? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Lena's voice rose despite her attempt at control. Because it sounds like you're telling me I'm too naive, too weak, too stupid to understand the reality of the situation, that I should just trust you to handle everything while I stay locked in my pretty room like a doll you take out when convenient. Victor's jaw tightened. You're twisting my words. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, you've made every significant decision about my life since I walked through your door. You bought my debt without asking. You brought me to that function without fully explaining the risks. You're keeping me prisoner now without considering that maybe, just maybe, I deserve a say in my own fate. I'm keeping you alive. Maybe I'd rather live dangerously than exist safely. The words burst from Lena before she could stop them. Maybe I'm tired of being protected and controlled and managed like I'm something fragile that might break if the world touches me too hard. Silence crashed between them. Victor stared at her, something like pain flickering across his features. You think I want this? His voice was quiet, dangerous. You think I enjoy having someone I... He stopped, the unfinished sentence hanging in the air. Having someone whose safety I'm responsible for? It would be easier if you were just an employee, Lena. Easier if I could be objective and cold and make decisions based purely on strategy. Then why aren't you? Because you make me want things I stopped believing in years ago. The confession exploded from him. You make me want to be better than what I am. You make me hope that maybe someone can look at me and see something other than violence and control and calculated cruelty. And that hope is more dangerous than any enemy I've ever faced. Lena's anger evaporated, replaced by something more complicated. Victor, a thunderous crash from somewhere in the mansion cut her off. Glass shattering, alarms screaming to life, shouting voices carrying through the walls. Victor's hand went immediately to the small of his back, retrieving a gun Lena hadn't known he was carrying. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. What's happening? Roman's making his real move. The federal visit was a distraction. Victor was already moving toward the door. "Lock it, Lena, now." He disappeared into the hallway and Lena heard his footsteps running toward the commotion. She moved to close the door, her hand on the knob, every instinct screaming at her to obey. Then she heard the scream, Mrs. Chen. Somewhere below, terrified and hurt. Lena's body made the decision before her mind caught up. She ran from her room, following the sounds of chaos toward the mansion's first floor. The grand foyer had become a battlefield. 2 of Victor's security personnel were down, bleeding but alive. Mrs. Chen huddled behind an overturned table, her face pale with terror. And in the center of it all stood 4 men in tactical gear, weapons drawn, advancing toward the hallway that led to Victor's office. "Where is he?" The lead man's voice was cold, professional. "Where's Kane?" One of the wounded guards groaned but didn't answer. The lead man pressed his boot into the guard's injured leg, eliciting a scream. "Stop!" Lena's voice cut through the chaos before she could stop herself. Every weapon in the room swung toward her. The lead man's eyes locked on her face, recognition sparking. Well, well, the girlfriend," he smiled, the expression turning his handsome features predatory. "Roman said you were pretty. He didn't mention you were stupid enough to make yourself visible during a tactical extraction." "Tactical extraction?" Lena forced her voice to stay steady. "You mean home invasion?" "Semantics. Where's Victor Kane?" "Not here." The lie came easily. "He left an hour ago, business meeting across town." The lead man studied her, weighing truth against deception. "You're lying, but that's okay. We have time." He gestured to one of his companions. "Secure her. If Kane won't come to us, we'll make sure he has a reason to return." 2 men moved toward Lena. She backed away, her mind racing, searching for options that didn't exist. Then Victor's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Gentlemen, I believe you're looking for me." He stood at the top of the grand staircase, his gun trained on the lead man, his expression utterly calm. "You've damaged my property, injured my staff, and threatened someone under my protection. I'm trying to determine if there's any scenario where you leave here breathing. There's 4 of us and 1 of you, Kane. Math isn't on your side." The lead man's weapon stayed trained on Lena. "Drop the gun or I put 3 rounds in your girlfriend's chest." "She's not my girlfriend. She's an employee. Replaceable." Victor's voice was ice. "But my reputation isn't. And if I let you walk out of here after this invasion, every 2-bit criminal in the city will think my home is vulnerable." The lead man's smile widened. "Interesting bluff. But Roman was very specific about how much she matters to you. Something about the way you reacted when he touched her wrist." Roman sees what he wants to see. It's why he consistently overestimates his own importance. Victor descended 1 step, his gun never wavering. "Last chance. Leave now, and I let you report back to Roman that you failed but survived. Stay, and you become an object lesson about the cost of invading my territory." The lead man's finger tightened on his trigger. "I don't think—" The shot came from behind him. The man to his left dropped instantly, a bloom of red spreading across his tactical vest. Victor's security team poured into the foyer from multiple entrances, weapons drawn, surrounding the invaders. Marcus's voice boomed through the chaos. "Weapons down, now!" The tactical situation had reversed in seconds. The lead man's eyes darted, calculating odds, finding them impossible. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. Smart choice. Victor descended the remaining stairs, his gun still trained center mass. "Marcus, secure them in the basement. Make them comfortable, but not too comfortable. I want them scared but coherent when I question them." "Yes, sir." Victor's security team moved with efficient brutality, disarming and restraining the invaders. The lead man kept his eyes on Victor as he was forced to his knees. "Roman will come for her. You know that. This doesn't end here." "You're right. It doesn't." Victor's voice was utterly calm. "Tell Roman that if he wants Lena Carter, he'll have to kill me first, and I'm substantially harder to kill than he imagines." The invaders were dragged away. Mrs. Chen and the wounded guards were being attended to by security personnel who apparently had medical training. The chaos resolved into controlled cleanup with practiced efficiency. Then Victor's attention finally landed on Lena. The cold fury in his gray eyes made her step backward. "I told you to stay in your room. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying. I gave you explicit instructions. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. Were those instructions unclear? Mrs. Chen was screaming. I don't care what you heard. Victor closed the distance between them in 3 strides, his hands gripping her arms. You could have been shot, killed, taken. Do you understand that? Those men came here specifically for you, Lena. Roman sent them to kidnap you, and you walked directly into their hands because you can't follow simple instructions designed to keep you alive. I was trying to help. You were trying to get yourself killed. His grip tightened, not painfully but desperately. And I can't. His voice cracked slightly. I can't protect you if you won't let me. Lena stared at him, seeing past the fury to the fear underneath. Victor Kane, the man who controlled everything, was terrified. Not for himself. For her. I'm sorry, she whispered. Some of the tension drained from his shoulders. Sorry doesn't make you less dead if a bullet finds you. He pulled her closer, his forehead touching hers. You have to stop being brave, Lena. Brave gets you killed in my world. What should I be instead? Smart, careful, willing to trust that I know how to navigate this when you don't. His hand slid from her arms to her back, holding her against his chest. Roman won't stop. This was just the opening move. He'll escalate, probe for weaknesses, keep pressing until he finds a way to take you or kill me. And I need you to understand that following my instructions isn't about control. It's about keeping you alive long enough for me to end this. How do you end it? Victor's laugh was dark. The same way wars have always ended, with someone dead and someone victorious. Lena pulled back enough to see his face. You're going to kill him. I'm going to do whatever is necessary to ensure you're safe. If that means killing Roman Hale, then yes. Without hesitation, without remorse, without losing a single night's sleep. The casual certainty in his voice should have horrified her. Instead, Lena felt something else, a dark satisfaction that someone cared enough about her survival to become monstrous in her defense. What's wrong with me? She whispered. What do you mean? I should be horrified. You just told me you're planning murder, and all I feel is... She struggled for words. Grateful. Safe. Like violence in my defense is somehow romantic instead of terrifying. Victor's smile was sad. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just finally understanding the world as it actually is instead of how you wish it could be. Morality is a luxury for people who've never had to choose between being good and being alive. Is that what you chose? To be alive instead of good? Every single day. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. And I'd make the same choice again if it meant keeping you safe. Before Lena could respond, Marcus appeared in the foyer doorway. Sir, we have a problem. The lead invader is demanding to speak with you, says he has information you'll want about Roman's next move. Victor's expression hardened back into the cold mask. Take Miss Carter to the secure room on the 4th floor. Post guards. No one enters except you or me. Victor, Lena started. No arguments. Not this time. He kissed her forehead quickly, the gesture tender despite the circumstances. I'll come for you when it's safe, I promise. Marcus's hand settled gently on Lena's elbow. This way, Miss Carter. Lena allowed herself to be led away, looking back once to see Victor descending toward the basement, his shoulders set, his purpose clear. She was being protected again, hidden away while Victor fought battles she couldn't see. And the most terrifying realization was that part of her was starting to accept it. The secure room on the 4th floor was less a room and more a vault with windows. Steel-reinforced door, bulletproof glass, a panic button by the bed that Marcus demonstrated with grim efficiency. He posted 2 guards outside before leaving Lena alone in what felt less like protection and more like a gilded prison cell. She paced the perimeter, her mind replaying the violence in the foyer, the cold certainty in Victor's voice when he'd promised to kill Roman Hale. Hours crawled past with excruciating slowness. Lena watched the sun track across the sky through bulletproof windows, watched shadows lengthen across the estate's grounds, watched security personnel move in coordinated patterns that suggested ongoing crisis management. No one came. No updates, no information, nothing but silence, and her increasingly catastrophic imagination. When the door finally opened, it was full dark outside. Victor entered alone, looking more exhausted than Lena had ever seen him. Blood stained his shirt cuff, not his own, she hoped, and his eyes carried the weight of decisions made and actions taken. "Are you hurt?" Lena asked before he could speak. "No." Victor locked the door behind him, then seemed to realize the implications of being alone with her in a bedroom. "I should have brought Marcus. I'm not here to—" "I know." Lena sat on the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. "What happened?" Victor moved to the window, staring out at darkness. The lead invader talked, extensively. Roman's planning something bigger than a simple kidnapping. He's been building a case against me with federal prosecutors, testimony from former associates, financial records, surveillance footage. He was going to take you as leverage, force me to either surrender myself to authorities or watch him hurt you until I complied. Ice flooded Lena's veins. He'd actually torture me just to get to you? Without hesitation, Roman sees people as tools. Use them, break them, discard them. Victor's reflection in the window was haggard. But his plan required you alive and accessible. Now that we know his strategy, we can counter it. How? By removing you from the equation entirely. Victor turned from the window, his gray eyes finding hers. I've arranged for you to disappear. New identity, untraceable location. Enough money that you'll never have to worry about debt or survival again. You leave tomorrow morning before dawn. By the time Roman realizes you're gone, you'll be 3 states away with documentation so clean, even federal databases will confirm your new identity. The words hit Lena like physical blows. You're sending me away. I'm setting you free. Like I promised I would if that's what you wanted. Victor's voice was carefully neutral, but pain flickered in his eyes. You'll be safe, Lena. Free from me, free from Roman, free from all of this violence. You can have a normal life, start over. Become whoever you want to be without men fighting wars over you. Lena stared at him, trying to process the magnitude of what he was offering. Freedom, safety, the chance to reclaim her life from the chaos that had consumed it. Everything she'd said she wanted just hours ago. So why did it feel like her heart was being carved out of her chest? What about you? She asked quietly. I'll handle Roman, permanently, if necessary. Victor's jaw tightened. Once you're gone, he has no leverage. It becomes a straightforward conflict between rivals instead of a hostage situation. I'm very good at straightforward conflicts. You're going to kill him. I'm going to do whatever ensures you're never looking over your shoulder, wondering if he's found you. Victor moved closer, crouching in front of where she sat so they were eye level. You deserve peace, Lena. You deserve to wake up without fear, to make choices without calculating survival. To exist as something more than an asset in someone else's war. I can't give you that while you're here, but I can give you freedom. Lena's hands trembled in her lap. What if I don't want freedom? What if I want to stay? Victor's expression cracked, vulnerability bleeding through his controlled facade. Don't say that. Don't make this harder than it already is. Why is it hard? If you don't care about me, if I'm just an employee or an asset, then my leaving should be convenient, strategic. You said yourself I'm a liability. Lena's voice rose despite her attempt at control. So why do you look like sending me away is killing you? Because it is. The confession burst from him like a dam breaking. Because every instinct I have is screaming at me to keep you here, to lock you in this room, to build higher walls and hire more guards, and never let you out of my sight. Because the thought of you existing somewhere in the world where I can't protect you is more terrifying than anything Roman could do to me. Then don't send me away. I have to. Victor's hands found hers, gripping them desperately. Because keeping you here is selfish. You didn't choose this life, this violence, this constant fear. You were desperate, and I took advantage of that desperation by buying your debt and making you dependent on me. Letting you go is the first unselfish thing I've done since you walked into my life. Lena pulled one hand free and pressed it to his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. What if I choose to stay? What if I'm making that choice freely, with full knowledge of what it means? You can't make that choice, Not while you're still in my debt, still living under my roof, still surrounded by my influence. Any choice you make here is compromised by power dynamics and survival instincts. Victor's voice broke slightly. I need you to be free enough to choose, Lena, even if that choice breaks me. Tears burned in Lena's eyes. You're an idiot. Victor's laugh was shattered. Probably. But I'm an idiot who cares enough about you to let you go. Before Lena could respond, her phone, the burner Victor had given her weeks ago for emergencies, buzzed in her pocket. She retrieved it with shaking hands, staring at the unknown number on the screen. Don't answer it, Victor said immediately, but Lena had already pressed accept, some instinct she couldn't name driving her decision. Hello? Miss Carter, how lovely to finally speak directly. Roman Hale's smooth voice filled her ear and Lena's blood turned to ice. I hope Victor's protection is keeping you safe. Though judging by the failed extraction at his estate, perhaps his security isn't quite as impenetrable as he believes. Victor's hand shot out, his expression murderous. Lena pulled the phone away before he could take it, making a split-second decision. What do you want? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. To offer you the same thing Victor is clearly considering, freedom. But unlike his version, mine doesn't require you to disappear into witness protection and spend your life looking over your shoulder. Roman's tone was conversational, almost friendly. I want to meet with you. Neutral location, no security, just a conversation between two intelligent people about your options. You kidnapped me. Why would I ever meet with you willingly? Because Victor is planning to send you away to protect you from me. And you deserve to know if that protection is necessary or if it's just another form of control. Roman paused. I'm not the monster he's painted me as, Miss Carter. I'm a businessman who occasionally has conflicts with other businessmen. The violence, the threats, those are Victor's specialty, not mine. I simply defend myself when necessary. Lena looked at Victor, whose expression promised immediate violence if she showed any sign of considering Roman's offer. But something in Roman's words resonated with the doubts she'd been carrying, the questions about whether Victor's protection was genuine or just sophisticated imprisonment. Where and when? She asked. Victor lunged for the phone, but Lena stepped back, keeping it out of reach. His eyes were wild, desperate. Tomorrow, noon, the Riverside Cafe on Merchant Street. Public location, witnesses everywhere, no possibility of violence. Roman's voice carried satisfaction. Come alone, Miss Carter. If Victor or his security team appear, I'll simply leave. This is between you and me. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Oh, and Miss Carter? Ask Victor about his wife, about what happened to the last woman who trusted his protection. See if his answer matches the truth. Roman disconnected before Lena could respond. The phone slipped from Lena's fingers, clattering to the floor. Victor stood frozen, his face drained of color, his expression shattered. Your wife? Lena's voice came out barely above a whisper. Victor's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Don't let Roman poison this with his manipulation. Then tell me the truth. Were you married? Yes. The word was torn from him. 7 years ago. Her name was Elena. His voice cracked. She died because of me. The room spun. Lena sat down hard on the bed, her legs unable to support her. What happened? Victor moved to the window again, his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. I was younger, stupider, convinced I could keep my personal life separate from my business. Elena was an art teacher, good, kind, nothing to do with my world. I thought loving her could make me better, could redeem the violence I trafficked in daily. Victor, my enemies discovered her, used her as leverage, exactly like Roman is trying to use you. They took her, held her for 3 days while they tried to force me to surrender territory and assets. Victor's voice was utterly flat, emotionless in the way of trauma too deep to touch. I refused. I thought I could negotiate, could find a tactical solution that saved her without sacrificing everything I'd built. I was wrong. Horror crawled up Lena's spine. They killed her. They returned her body to my doorstep with a note explaining that love was a weakness I could no longer afford. Victor's reflection in the window showed a man carved from ice and suffering. I buried her, destroyed everyone involved in her death, and swore I'd never make the same mistake again. The mistake of loving someone? The mistake of believing I could protect someone while keeping them close. The mistake of thinking my feelings mattered more than their safety. Victor finally turned, and the anguish in his eyes nearly broke Lena's heart. Don't you see? This is why I have to send you away, because I already failed to protect one woman I cared about. I won't fail again. I can't. Lena stood on shaking legs, crossing the room to where Victor stood. I'm not Elena. No, you're stronger, braver, more stubborn about your own safety. His hand lifted to her face, cupping her cheek, which is why losing you would destroy what little humanity I have left. Then don't lose me. Fight for me instead of sending me away. Fighting for you means making you a target. It means accepting that every day you're with me is a day someone might try to use you against me. It means watching you live in fear and calling it love. Victor's thumb traced her cheekbone. I can't do that to you, Lena. I won't become the cage you resent. What if I'm willing to risk it? What if I choose you anyway, knowing all the dangers? Then I'd have to be strong enough to refuse that choice, to protect you from your own courage. Victor leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. The car leaves at dawn. Marcus will escort you. I won't be there because if I see you leave, I'll change my mind. And changing my mind gets you killed. Lena's tears finally spilled over. I hate you for this. Good. Hate is safer than love. Victor kissed her forehead, the gesture achingly tender. Goodbye, Lena. Be safe. Be happy. Be free. He pulled away and walked to the door, his movements mechanical, controlled. Victor, wait. Lena's voice stopped him. What if I meet with Roman first? What if I hear what he has to say? Victor's hand froze on the door handle. Absolutely not. That's exactly what he wants, to get you alone, to manipulate you, to take you or kill you without witnesses. You said yourself that the Riverside Cafe is public. Witnesses everywhere. He can't do anything there without exposing himself. Lena moved closer, her mind racing. What if this is the way to end it? I meet with him, I hear his offer, and I choose to leave anyway. Then he has no leverage, no reason to pursue me. It ends without more violence. Or he kills you in broad daylight and disappears before anyone can stop him. Roman is capable of anything, Lena. Don't underestimate him because he speaks politely. I'm not underestimating him. I'm trusting that he's rational enough to know that murdering me publicly would bring consequences even he can't escape. Lena grabbed Victor's arm, forcing him to face her. Let me do this. Let me make one choice about my own fate before you ship me off to a new life I didn't ask for. Victor stared at her, war raging behind his eyes. If anything happens to you, then you were right, and I was stupid. But at least it will have been my choice. Lena's grip tightened. I'm so tired of being protected, Victor. Just this once, let me protect myself. The internal battle played across Victor's features, fear against respect, control against trust. Finally, something in him surrendered. I'll have security watching from a distance. Any sign of danger, they extract you immediately. His voice was hoarse. And if Roman touches you, if he so much as makes you uncomfortable, I'll burn his entire empire to ash. Deal. Lena stood on her toes, pressing a quick kiss to his cheek before she could lose her nerve. Thank you for trusting me. I'm not trusting you. I'm respecting your right to make catastrophically stupid decisions. But his hand came up to hold hers against his face. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. Victor left then, before either of them could change their minds. Lena stood alone in the secure room, her heart hammering, her mind reeling from everything she'd learned. Victor had loved before, had lost someone to the same violence now threatening Lena. And despite that trauma, despite every logical reason to remain emotionally distant, he was starting to care about her. The question was whether that caring was enough reason to stay, or the best reason to run. Sleep came in fragments that night, punctuated by nightmares of Victor's dead wife and Roman's cold smile. When dawn arrived with its usual knock from Mrs. Chen, Lena was already awake, already dressed, already committed to a decision that felt either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. Mr. Kane said you're leaving this morning, Mrs. Chen said, her expression troubled. I'm sorry to see you go, Miss Carter. You brought something to this house that's been missing for years. What's that? Hope. The possibility that maybe the life Mr. Kane has built doesn't have to be the only life he's capable of living. Mrs. Chen pressed a small envelope into Lena's hands. This is from me. Open it when you're safely away. Lena pocketed the envelope without looking, her throat too tight for words. Thank you for everything. Marcus was waiting by the car, his expression professionally neutral. Miss Carter. Ready? Almost. Lena turned back to the mansion, memorizing its lines, its windows, the way morning light turned the stone to gold. Somewhere inside, Victor was avoiding this goodbye, unable to watch her leave. Lena understood. She wasn't sure she could watch herself leave either. Actually, Marcus, change of plans. I need you to take me to Riverside Cafe. Merchant Street. We're meeting someone at noon. Marcus's expression shifted to alarm. Mr. Kane specifically instructed, I know what he instructed. I'm changing the plan. Lena met his eyes steadily. You can either drive me there or I can take a cab. Your choice. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then sighed. He's going to kill me for this. Probably, but he'll thank you later. Lena climbed into the car. Let's go. The drive to Riverside Cafe took 30 minutes through morning traffic. Lena used the time to prepare herself mentally, running through possible scenarios, rehearsing responses to manipulation tactics Roman might employ. Marcus made several calls, presumably alerting Victor to the change in plans and arranging covert security. By the time they arrived, Lena's hands had stopped shaking. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with the consequences. The cafe was exactly as Roman had described. Public, busy, filled with the kind of witnesses that made violence impractical. Lena spotted him immediately at a corner table, coffee already ordered, his posture relaxed and confident. Marcus gripped her arm before she could exit the car. I'll be watching. Any signal at all, any discomfort, and we're extracting you. Understood. Lena squeezed his hand once, then stepped out into morning sunshine. Roman stood as she approached, his smile warm and seemingly genuine. Miss Carter, thank you for coming. I wasn't certain you would. I almost didn't. Lena sat across from him, accepting the coffee he'd ordered for her without asking. You have 20 minutes to say whatever you think will convince me you're not the monster Victor describes. Then I'm leaving. Roman's laugh was easy, charming. Direct. I appreciate that. Victor always did surround himself with interesting people. He leaned back, studying her with eyes that missed nothing. Tell me, what has he told you about me? That you're dangerous, that you use people as leverage, that you'd kill me without hesitation if it served your purposes. Lena met his gaze without flinching. Are any of those things untrue? Dangerous? Absolutely. Using leverage? Sometimes. Would I kill you? Not unless you became a genuine threat, which seems unlikely. Roman sipped his coffee. But here's what Victor won't tell you. Everything he accuses me of, he's guilty of himself. The violence, the manipulation, the casual destruction of anyone who gets in his way. The only difference is that Victor has convinced himself his brutality is justified by some moral code he's invented. And you haven't? I'm honest about what I am. I don't pretend my actions are noble or my violence is somehow redemptive. I'm a criminal who builds power through whatever means necessary. Victor is a criminal who lies to himself about being better than what he does. Roman set down his cup. Which version is more dangerous, Miss Carter? The monster who knows he's a monster, or the monster who believes he's a hero? The question struck deeper than Lena wanted to admit. Why did you want to meet with me? Because I'm offering you something Victor never will. Honesty about your value and your choices. Roman leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on her. Victor bought your debt? Yes, but he didn't do it to save you from dangerous creditors. He did it because he wanted control over you. Because having you indebted to him meant you couldn't leave, couldn't refuse, couldn't exist independently of his influence. That's not, isn't it? Ask yourself why he bought your specific debt out of thousands he could have purchased. Why you, Lena? What made you different from every other desperate person in this city? Roman's smile was knowing. He saw something he wanted to possess, and Victor Kane always gets what he wants, even if he has to buy it disguised as benevolence. Lena's coffee tasted bitter suddenly. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that leaving with Victor's arranged identity isn't freedom, it's exile. He's removing you from the board because you've become a liability to his control. And once you're gone, once you're isolated with a fake name in a strange city, what's to stop him from monitoring you, controlling you from a distance, making sure you never truly escape his influence? Victor wouldn't he? He's already tracking your phone, your movements, your every conversation. He knows more about you than you know about yourself. That's not protection, Miss Carter. That's surveillance. Roman's expression softened into something almost sympathetic. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to question whether you can trust him. Lena's mind reeled. Every point Roman made had a terrible logic to it, a way of twisting facts into patterns that suggested manipulation rather than protection. What's your alternative, Shab? She asked finally. Come work for me. Same arrangement as with Victor. Your debt cleared, your safety guaranteed. But I won't pretend to be your savior. You'll know exactly what you're trading and why. No lies, no manipulation disguised as caring. Just honest transaction between two people who understand power. You want me to betray Victor. I want you to choose yourself. Victor is sending you away because having you close is inconvenient. I'm offering you a place to stay because your intelligence and courage are valuable assets. Roman's hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. He loves you in his broken way, but his love is a cage. Mine would be a contract. Which do you prefer? Before Lena could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the parking lot. Northeast corner. Then decide who's lying. Lena stood, her heart racing. I need a minute. Roman's smile suggested he knew exactly what she'd find. Take your time. Lena walked to the cafe's window, her eyes scanning the parking lot. In the northeast corner, partially hidden by other vehicles, sat a black SUV with tinted windows. Even from this distance, she could see the telltale outline of surveillance equipment. Victor hadn't just arranged distant security. He'd put her under active surveillance, watching, listening, monitoring every word of her conversation with Roman. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. He didn't trust her judgment, her intelligence, her ability to navigate this conversation without oversight. Lena returned to the table, her hands shaking with fury. You found the surveillance? Roman asked gently. Yes. And now you understand. Victor says he wants you free, but he can't actually let you go. His need for control is too fundamental to who he is. Roman stood, extending his hand. My offer stands. Work with me or leave the city entirely. But don't go back to Victor's cage believing it's safety. That's how you end up like Elena. The name sent ice through Lena's veins. You know about his wife. Everyone in our world knows about Elena, about how Victor's obsessive need to control everything got her killed, about how he keeps making the same mistakes with different women, convinced each time that his methods will work if he just controls harder, watches closer, cages more thoroughly. Roman's expression was genuinely sympathetic. Don't become his next tragedy, Lena. You deserve better. Lena took his card, though her hand trembled holding it. I need time to think. Of course. You have 48 hours. After that, Victor will have you on a plane to somewhere you can't return from. Roman nodded toward the parking lot. And Miss Carter? When you confront him about the surveillance, watch how he justifies it. Listen to whether he apologizes or explains. That will tell you everything you need to know about whether his love is genuine or just sophisticated control. He left cash for the coffee and departed, leaving Lena alone at the table with her shattered illusions and growing doubts. Marcus appeared within seconds. Miss Carter, we need to leave. Now. Did Victor listen to everything? Lena's voice was cold. Marcus's expression confirmed it. He was protecting you. He was spying on me. Lena stood, her fury crystallizing into something sharp and dangerous. Take me back to the estate. I need to speak with Victor privately, now. The drive back was silent, Marcus wisely saying nothing while Lena's anger built like storm pressure. By the time they arrived, she was incandescent with rage. Victor waited in the foyer, his expression guarded. Lena, did you have surveillance on me? She demanded. Yes or no? His jaw tightened. Yes. Even after you said you trusted me, Even after you claimed to respect my right to make my own choices. I trusted you. I didn't trust Roman not to take advantage of any opening. Victor moved toward her, but Lena stepped back. I needed to know you were safe. You needed to maintain control. Lena's voice echoed in the vast space. Roman was right about you. You can't actually let go. You can't actually trust anyone to exist independently of your management. Roman is a liar who manipulates people by telling partial truths. Then which part was the lie? Lena interrupted. The part where you bought my debt to control me? The part where you're sending me away because I'm inconvenient? The part where your need for control got your wife killed? She saw him flinch at the last part, but her anger pushed past compassion. Tell me which part was false, Victor, because right now all of it sounds true. I bought your debt to save your life. I'm sending you away to protect you. And Elena died because I didn't control enough, because I was naive enough to think love conquered strategy. Victor's voice rose to match hers. I'm not going to apologize for doing everything in my power to ensure you don't end up dead because of me. Then you're going to end up alone. Lena's tears finally spilled over, because no one can love you through this much control. No one can breathe in a cage this small, even if the bars are made of good intentions. Victor stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. Then tell me what you want, Lena. Tell me how to keep you safe without losing you, because I don't know how to do both. The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked through Lena's anger. She saw past the control to the fear driving it, a man so traumatized by loss that he'd turned protection into suffocation without realizing what he'd become. I want you to trust me, she said quietly. Not trust that I'll be safe. Not trust that I'll make smart choices. Just trust that whatever happens, we face it together instead of you making all the decisions alone. And if trusting you gets you killed, then that's my choice to make. Lena closed the distance between them, placing her hand on his chest, where she could feel his heart hammering. I'd rather die free beside you than live safely alone. But you have to actually let me choose. Victor's hand covered hers, pressing it against his heart. I don't know if I'm capable of that. Then learn, or let me go for real this time, not to witness protection or a new identity. Just let me go and accept that some people aren't meant to be saved by you. They stood in the vast foyer, the space between them charged with everything unsaid, fear and love, and the terrible weight of choices that had no right answers. Finally, Victor spoke, his voice barely audible. What did Roman offer you? A job. My debt cleared. Honest transaction without pretending to be salvation. Are you going to take it? Lena looked up at him, seeing past the control to the man underneath. Broken, trying, terrified of failing again. That depends on whether you can actually let me stay. Not as property or an asset. As a partner who gets equal say in the choices that affect her life. Even when those choices are dangerous? Especially then. Victor closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, something had shifted. Surrender or acceptance. Lena couldn't tell which. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be good at it. I can't promise I won't make mistakes or slide back into old patterns. But I'll try. It wasn't everything Lena wanted, but it was honest. And honesty, she was learning, mattered more than perfect promises. Then I'm staying, she said. For now, we figure this out together. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her with desperate intensity. Together, he repeated, even when it terrifies me. Lena let herself be held, let herself trust that maybe, possibly, two broken people could build something better than what they'd both survived. Outside, beyond the estate's walls, Roman Hale smiled and made a phone call. The real game was just beginning. The days following Lena's decision to stay felt like living in the eye of a hurricane, deceptive calm masking the violence circling just beyond sight. Victor kept his promise to include her in decisions, though Lena saw the effort it cost him. Every conversation where he asked her opinion rather than issuing instructions, every moment he forced himself to pause and listen instead of commanding. These were small victories over decades of control. But the war with Roman continued escalating. Reports filtered through Marcus and Victor's security team, Roman's people probing the estate's defenses, asking questions about Lena in places she'd never been, building some strategy whose shape remained unclear. Victor increased security, reinforced protocols, but refused to hide Lena away completely. If we lock you in a vault, Roman wins without firing a shot, Victor explained one evening as they reviewed security footage in his office. He'll have proven that his presence in our lives dictates our choices. That's the real victory he's seeking, not your death, but proof that he controls my fear. Lena studied the monitors showing various angles of the estate, the city beyond, locations she didn't recognize. What's his endgame? What does he actually want? Territory, power, the satisfaction of defeating me publicly enough that other rivals see an opening. Victor's finger traced patterns on the desk's surface, restless energy seeking outlet. But more than that, he wants me broken. Losing Elena nearly destroyed me. Losing you would finish what her death started. Roman knows that. He's patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike. So we don't give him that moment. Lena's hand covered Victor's, stilling his restless movement. We end this before he gets the chance. Victor's gray eyes met hers. Ending it means killing him. You understand that? There's no negotiation, no compromise. Roman won't stop until one of us is dead. Then make sure it's him and not you. The words should have horrified her, casual acceptance of murder as solution. Instead, Lena felt only cold pragmatism. Roman had made his intentions clear at the cafe. He saw people as tools, including her. Protecting herself meant accepting Victor's violence as necessary rather than monstrous. You've changed, Victor observed quietly. When you first arrived, you still believed in justice, rules, fairness. Now you're suggesting assassination without flinching. You changed me. This world changed me. Lena pulled her hand back, something bitter settling in her chest. I'm not sure if I should thank you or resent you for it. Resent me. It's safer. Victor stood, moving to the windows overlooking the grounds. I never wanted to make you into someone who thinks murder is acceptable, but I'd rather you be a realist who survives than an idealist who dies believing the world is better than it is. Before Lena could respond, the office door burst open. Marcus stood there, his expression grim, a tablet in his hands. Sir, we have a situation. You need to see this. Now. Victor took the tablet, his face draining of color as he watched whatever footage Marcus had pulled up. When? 17 minutes ago. We're tracking them now, but... Marcus glanced at Lena, uncertainty flickering across his features. Show me, Lena demanded. Victor hesitated, then turned the tablet toward her. The footage showed a small apartment Lena didn't recognize at first. Then she saw the photographs on the wall, pictures of her mother, images from Lena's childhood, a life she'd thought she'd left behind. Her old apartment, the one she'd abandoned when the debts became too crushing. And in the center of the living room, Roman Hale sat casually on her worn couch, smiling directly at the hidden camera he'd obviously known was there. He's sending a message, Victor said, his voice tight with controlled fury. He found where you lived before. He's demonstrating that he can reach into your past, that nowhere you've been is safe from his influence. Lena's hands shook as she watched Roman stand and walk through her former home, touching her things with casual ownership. He stopped at a framed photograph of Lena and her mother, taken during better times, before cancer and debt had consumed everything. Roman lifted the frame, showed it to the camera, and smiled. Then he pocketed it. The violation was absolute. He'd taken something irreplaceable, not for strategic value, but simply because he could, because he knew it would hurt her. Where is he now? Lena asked, her voice cold. Marcus checked his phone. Still at the apartment. Either he doesn't know we're watching or he wants us to come after him. Could be a trap. It's definitely a trap. Victor set the tablet down, his mind clearly racing through tactical considerations. Roman doesn't make unforced errors. He knows we're monitoring that location. He wants us to react emotionally instead of strategically. Then let's not give him what he wants. Lena's anger crystallized into something harder, sharper. Let him keep the photograph. Let him think he's winning. We focus on the real target. Victor studied her. Which is? His empire. You said he's built power on territory and influence. What if we started dismantling that systematically? Not through violence, but through the same tactics he's using. finding pressure points, exploiting weaknesses, turning his allies against him. Marcus and Victor exchanged glances. Something like respect flickered across Marcus's features. "She's right," Marcus said. "We've been so focused on direct confrontation that we haven't considered asymmetric warfare. Roman's strength is his network, his distribution channels, his political connections, his financial infrastructure. Those are all vulnerable if we apply pressure correctly." Victor moved to his desk, pulling up files Lena had never seen, detailed intelligence on Roman's operations, organizational charts, financial records that must have cost a fortune to obtain. "I've been building this for months, mapping his empire, identifying critical nodes, but dismantling it without triggering open war requires precision and time we might not have." "Then we make the time." Lena joined him at the desk, studying the complex web of Roman's criminal enterprise. "He's patient. He's willing to wait for the perfect moment. So we convince him that moment hasn't arrived yet. We give him a different target to focus on while we quietly destroy the foundations of everything he's built." "What kind of target?" Victor asked. Lena met his eyes, her decision already made. "Me. I become visible again. I go back to some semblance of normal life, leave the estate, take a job, act like I'm moving on. Roman will assume you've given up trying to protect me completely. He'll see it as victory, proof that his psychological warfare worked." "Absolutely not." Victor's response was immediate. "That's exactly what he wants. You exposed, vulnerable, accessible for kidnapping or worse. That's what he thinks he wants. But what he actually wants is proof that he's broken you, that you're no longer the Victor Kane who controls everything through fear and power." Lena moved closer, forcing Victor to look at her. "Give him that proof. Let him see you apparently weakened. While he's focused on exploiting that perceived weakness, Marcus and your team dismantle his empire piece by piece. You're describing using yourself as bait in a trap that might not spring before he kills you. I'm describing trusting your security team to actually protect me while giving Roman enough rope to hang himself." Lena's voice softened slightly. "You said you'd try to let me participate in decisions. This is me participating. This is my choice." The internal war playing across Victor's features was visible, every instinct screaming at him to refuse, to lock Lena away where Roman couldn't reach her. But he'd promised to trust her judgment, to treat her as a partner rather than property. "If we do this," he said finally, his voice rough, "we do it completely. Full surveillance, armed security posing as civilians, extraction protocols for every possible scenario. The moment Roman makes any move toward you, we abandon the strategy and go to open war." "Agreed." Lena extended her hand. "Partners?" Victor took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he pulled her close. "Partners. Even though this terrifies me more than anything I've ever agreed to." "Good. Fear will keep you sharp." Lena echoed his earlier words back to him, earning a brief, pained smile. Marcus cleared his throat. "If we're actually doing this, we need to plan it meticulously. Every detail of Miss Carter's new routine needs to appear organic while actually being completely controlled. We'll need safe houses, backup identities, contingency plans for—" "I know." Victor released Lena reluctantly. "Start making arrangements. I want her in position within 72 hours. We move fast before Roman adjusts his strategy." The next 3 days transformed Lena's life with dizzying speed. Victor's people found her an apartment in a safe but unremarkable neighborhood, close enough to monitor constantly, mundane enough not to draw attention. They created employment records at a bookstore owned by one of Victor's shell companies, complete with references and work history that would survive basic scrutiny. Mrs. Chen helped Lena pack with visible reluctance. "I don't like this plan, Miss Carter. Too many variables, too many things that could go catastrophically wrong." "Victor doesn't like it either. But it's the right move strategically." Lena folded clothes into a suitcase, her movements automatic, while her mind raced through memorized emergency protocols. "Strategy doesn't comfort me when I'm imagining your funeral." Mrs. Chen's voice cracked slightly. "You've become important to this household. To him. Losing you would—" She stopped, emotion overwhelming her usual composure. Lena set down the shirt she'd been folding and pulled Mrs. Chen into an unexpected embrace. "I'm not going to die. Victor's people are too good, and I'm too stubborn. But thank you for caring." When moving day arrived, Victor insisted on driving her personally. They rode in silence through morning traffic, the weight of unspoken fears pressing against them like atmospheric pressure. At the apartment building, Victor helped carry boxes despite Marcus's presence for exactly that purpose. Inside the modest one-bedroom space, he inspected every corner, every window, every potential entry point with professional paranoia. Security cameras here, here, and here. He pointed to locations invisible to casual observation. Panic buttons under the kitchen counter and beside the bed. Armed response team stationed 2 blocks away, average response time 90 seconds. Marcus will check in daily, posing as a building maintenance supervisor. I know, we've reviewed this 50 times. Lena caught his hand, stopping his restless inspection. Victor, I'll be fine. You can't know that. His grip tightened on her fingers. Roman could strike any time. He could already be planning. Then your team will stop him. That's what they do. Lena pulled him closer until they were face to face. You have to let me do this. Not because it's safe, but because it's necessary. We end this now, or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. But Victor's free hand came up to cup her face. If anything happens to you, it won't. But if it does, I need you to know. He struggled with words that clearly didn't come easily. I need you to know that you mattered, that you changed things I thought were unchangeable, that loving you was worth every risk, every fear, every... Lena kissed him before he could finish, pouring into the gesture everything she couldn't articulate. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Victor rested his forehead against hers. Come back to me when this is over, he whispered. I promise. He left then, before either of them could change their minds. Lena stood at the window and watched his car disappear into traffic, feeling simultaneously free and terrified. The trap was set. Now they waited for Roman to spring it. The bookstore job proved easier than expected. The actual owner knew nothing about Victor's arrangement. He simply thought he'd hired a bright young woman through his usual channels. Lena shelved books, managed the register, recommended titles to customers, and tried to project normalcy while hyper-aware of the armed security watching from carefully positioned vantage points. Days passed without incident. Then a week. Lena began to wonder if Roman had somehow seen through the deception, if he was too smart to take the bait. Then he walked into the bookstore on a Thursday afternoon. Lena saw him immediately, Roman Hale browsing the fiction section with the casual interest of someone who had all the time in the world. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was expected, planned for. Her security team was in position. She finished helping another customer, then approached him with manufactured politeness. Can I help you find something? Roman looked up and his smile was warm, friendly, completely at odds with the predator she knew lurked beneath. Miss Carter, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't know you worked here. Recent development, trying to build something normal after... She let the sentence trail off meaningfully. After Victor? Roman's eyes gleamed with interest. I heard you'd left his estate. Congratulations on reclaiming your independence. It wasn't easy, but necessary. Lena maintained careful distance, aware of sightlines and camera angles. Did you actually need help finding a book, or is this a social call? Both, perhaps. I'm looking for a first edition Hemingway, but I'm also curious about how you're adjusting to life beyond golden cages. Roman moved slightly closer, and Lena felt her security team's attention sharpen. Are you genuinely free, Miss Carter? Or just in a larger cage with invisible bars? I'm as free as anyone can be in this city, which is to say, complicated. Lena gestured toward the rare books section. The Hemingway is this way. She led him through the store, hyper-aware of every customer, every potential threat. Roman followed with unhurried confidence, his presence radiating controlled danger. At the rare books case, Lena retrieved the requested volume. First edition, A Farewell to Arms. Fitting choice. I appreciate stories about doomed love and inevitable tragedy. Roman accepted the book, his fingers brushing hers deliberately. Tell me, Lena, may I call you Lena? Does Victor know you're working here, or was leaving his protection actually your choice? It was my choice. We agreed I needed space to figure out what I wanted without his influence constantly shaping my decisions. The lie came smoothly, rehearsed until it sounded like truth. He wasn't happy about it, but he respected my decision. How progressive of him. Though I wonder if his respect extends to truly letting you go, or if he simply found more subtle ways to maintain control. Roman set the book down, his full attention on Lena. I meant what I said at the cafe. My offer still stands. If you ever want genuine freedom, not the illusion of it, call me. He produced a card, different from the one he'd given her before. This one had only a phone number, nothing else. Lena took it, tucking it into her pocket. I'll keep that in mind. Please do. The world is smaller than you think, Lena, and the cages we think we've escaped have a way of following us. Roman collected his book, moved to pay at the register. It was lovely seeing you. I hope we cross paths again soon. After he left, Lena's hands shook so badly she had to grip the counter to steady them. Marcus appeared moments later, posing as a customer, his expression grim. He's testing you, seeing if you'll maintain the story, if you'll crack under direct pressure. Marcus pretended to browse while speaking quietly. You did well, but he's not buying it completely, expects some kind of trap. Then we give him what he expects. Lena's mind raced. We let him discover the security team. Let him think he's figured out the deception. That's when he'll make his real move, when he believes he's outsmarted us. Marcus studied her with new appreciation. You're starting to think like Victor. I'm starting to think like someone who wants to survive. Lena straightened, her hands steadying. Tell Victor that Roman made contact, and tell him I'm ready for whatever comes next. What came next was escalation. Roman's people appeared with increasing frequency, never threatening, never overt, just constant presence that signaled awareness. A man reading a newspaper across from the bookstore for hours. A woman who browsed but never bought anything. Cars that appeared repeatedly in Lena's neighborhood. Victor's response was measured escalation. More security, tighter protocols, but nothing that suggested panic. They were playing a careful game of chess where every move communicated something beyond its surface intention. 2 weeks into Lena's new routine, the real attack came. She was closing the bookstore alone, a calculated risk that Victor had argued against violently but ultimately accepted as necessary for maintaining believability. Marcus was positioned across the street. 2 other security personnel covered alternate angles. Lena was locking the front door when she felt the gun press against her spine. Don't move, don't scream, don't signal your security team. The voice was unfamiliar, male, utterly professional. There's a car at the curb. You're going to walk calmly to it and get inside. Any deviation, any attempt to alert your watchers, and I put a bullet through your spine. Understand? Lena's training kicked in. Victor had drilled her relentlessly on exactly this scenario. Yes. Good. Walk. They moved toward the waiting car, Lena's mind calculating angles and distances. Marcus would have seen them by now. The extraction team would be mobilizing. She just needed to stay alive long enough for them to act. The car door opened. Lena saw Roman inside, smiling. Hello, Lena. Time for that conversation we've been postponing. Before Lena could respond, chaos erupted. Marcus appeared from nowhere, his weapon drawn. The man with the gun at Lena's back moved to fire, but Marcus was faster. The shot echoed like thunder in the quiet street. The man dropped, bleeding, but alive. Marcus had aimed for the shoulder, disabling without killing. More of Victor's security poured from concealment. The driver of Roman's car reached for a weapon, but found himself staring down 3 barrels before he could draw. Roman, to his credit, didn't panic. He raised his hand slowly, his expression more annoyed than frightened. I see Victor prepared more thoroughly than I anticipated. Out of the car, slowly. Marcus's voice carried absolute authority. Roman complied, moving with careful deliberation. This isn't over, you know. Arresting me accomplishes nothing. I have lawyers, connections, resources that... We're not arresting you. Victor's voice cut through the night. He appeared from shadows like a materialization of violence itself, his expression colder than Lena had ever seen it. Behind him came more security, more weapons. A demonstration of force that transformed the street into a battlefield. We're having a conversation, Victor continued, stopping directly in front of Roman. About boundaries. About consequences. About what happens when you threaten people under my protection. Roman's smile was sharp. Going to kill me, Victor? In front of all these witnesses, I thought you were smarter than that. I am smart, which is why I'm not going to kill you. Victor's hand shot out, gripping Roman's throat, forcing him back against the car. I'm going to destroy everything you've built, every business, every connection, every asset. By tomorrow morning, your empire will be rubble. By next week, you'll be answering questions from federal prosecutors about crimes I've ensured they can prove. By next month, you'll be in prison wishing I'd killed you instead. You can't, Roman choked out. I already have. While you were focused on Lena, my people were systematically dismantling your organization, seizing accounts, compromising suppliers, turning your own people against you with offers they couldn't refuse. Victor's smile was terrible. You taught me something, Roman. You taught me that the best victories aren't violent. They're total, absolute. The kind where your enemy survives just long enough to understand how completely they've lost. Roman's face drained of color as understanding dawned. The girl was bait. Lena was never bait. She was the mission. Protecting her meant removing you as a threat permanently. Victor released Roman's throat, letting him gasp for air. The federal agents you'll meet tomorrow have everything they need. Financial records, witness testimony, physical evidence of crimes severe enough that even your lawyers can't save you. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cage substantially less comfortable than any I've built. Victor. Roman's voice carried desperation now. We're done talking. Victor turned to Marcus. Call our friends at the FBI. Tell them we've detained someone wanted for questioning. They'll know who. As Marcus made the call, Victor moved to Lena. His hands framed her face, his eyes searching for injury. Are you hurt? No, shaken, but not hurt. Lena covered his hands with hers. Is it really over? It's over. Roman's finished. His organization is scattered. You're safe. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her with desperate intensity. You're safe, and I'm never letting you be bait again, ever. Lena let herself be held, let herself believe that maybe, possibly, the nightmare was actually ending. Federal vehicles arrived with surprising speed, suggesting Victor had coordinated this carefully. Agents took Roman into custody with professional efficiency, reading rights and filing paperwork, while Victor's lawyers observed to ensure proper procedure. Roman looked back once as he was being placed in a federal car. His eyes found Lena's, and for just a moment she saw past the predator to something almost human. Recognition of defeat, maybe, or respect for a better-played game. Then he was gone, swallowed by the justice system Victor had weaponized against him. In the aftermath, as security teams cleaned up and witnesses were managed, Victor kept Lena close. His hand never left her back. His attention never wandered from her presence. We should get you somewhere safe, he said quietly. The apartment isn't secure anymore. Roman knew about it, which means others might. Then take me home. Lena met his eyes. The real home, the estate, if that offer's still open. Victor's expression shifted. Surprise, then something warmer. It's open. It's always been open for you. They drove through darkness toward the estate, leaving behind the bookstore and the apartment and the life Lena had temporarily inhabited. As the mansion's walls came into view, Lena felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Relief, safety, home. Mrs. Chen was waiting when they arrived, her expression fierce with worry until she saw Lena unharmed. Thank heavens, the entire staff has been terrified. I'm fine. We're all fine. Lena accepted Mrs. Chen's unexpected embrace. It's over. Is it really? Mrs. Chen looked to Victor for confirmation. Roman Hale will be in federal custody by morning, facing charges that guarantee decades of imprisonment. His organization is dismantled, his allies scattered, his resources seized. Victor's voice carried absolute certainty. It's over. That night, Lena stood in her old room, the one she'd occupied as a maid before everything had changed. The space looked exactly as she'd left it, preserved as if waiting for her return. A knock at the door interrupted her contemplation. Come in. Victor entered carrying something wrapped in cloth. I have something for you. Something I should have given you weeks ago. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a leather-bound ledger. Your debt. Every payment, every deduction, every transaction documented. And here, he turned to the final page. The balance. Lena stared at the number. 0. Your debt is paid, Victor said quietly. Has been for 3 weeks, actually. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd leave if you knew you weren't bound here anymore. The admission struck Lena silent. You kept me in debt psychologically even after I'd paid it off? Yes. Which makes me exactly the controlling bastard you've accused me of being. Victor set the ledger on her dresser. But I'm telling you now, you're free, Lena. Financially free, legally free, free to walk away any time you choose. No obligations, no conditions. Lena picked up the ledger, feeling the weight of it, literal and metaphorical. Why tell me now? Because I promised to stop caging you. Because you deserve to make choices based on what you want, not what you owe. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. I'm in love with you. I have been since you stitched my hand and told me I was scarier quiet than bleeding. And loving you means giving you the freedom to choose me or choose freedom, even if that choice destroys me. He left before Lena could respond, leaving her alone with the ledger and the most important decision of her life. She could leave, take the freedom Victor offered, build a life far from violence and danger and men who solved problems through force. Start over clean, unburdened by debt or obligation or the complicated feelings she'd developed for a man who'd bought her desperation and somehow transformed it into something resembling love. Or she could stay. Choose the cage knowingly, with full understanding of what it meant. Build something with Victor, not despite his violence, but accepting it as part of who he was. Transform protection into partnership, control into trust, desperation into something worth fighting for. Lena opened the ledger, found a pen, and wrote on the final page beneath the zero balance. Debt paid. Contract fulfilled. New terms requested. She left the ledger on Victor's desk with a note. We need to discuss my employment conditions. Your office, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Come prepared to negotiate. The next morning, Lena arrived at Victor's office exactly on time. He was already there, the ledger open on his desk, her note beside it. New terms? He asked carefully. New terms. Lena sat across from him, channeling every negotiation her mother had taught her, every lesson in self-advocacy she'd learned through desperation. I stay. Not as a maid, not as someone you're protecting out of obligation. I stay as your partner in the fullest sense of that word. Lena, I'm not finished. Partnership means equal say in decisions that affect both of us. It means transparency about your business, your dangers, your plans. It means treating me like someone capable of understanding and handling the reality of your world instead of someone to be sheltered from it. Lena leaned forward. It means trusting me with the truth, even when the truth is ugly. Victor listened without interrupting, his gray eyes fixed on her face. In exchange, Lena continued, I offer you something you haven't had since Elena died. Someone who chooses you knowing exactly what that means. Someone who won't run when things get dangerous or complicated. Someone who sees the monster you think you are and chooses to build something beautiful with it anyway. Silence filled the office. Victor stood, moved around the desk, and crouched in front of Lena's chair so they were eye level. You're proposing a partnership where I give up control and you accept danger, he said slowly. Where I trust you with everything, and you trust me not to cage you even when every instinct screams at me to protect you. Yes, that's terrifying. For both of us. Lena's hands found his. But I think we're both tired of being alone with our terrors. Maybe it's time to be terrified together. Victor's laugh was shaky, almost broken. I don't know if I can do this. Give up control, trust completely, accept that you might get hurt and not try to prevent every possible danger. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to try. Lena squeezed his hands. And I'll try to be patient when you fail. When you slide into old patterns of control, and I have to remind you we're partners. We'll both fail constantly, but we'll fail together instead of alone. Together, Victor repeated, testing the word. Then quietly, I love you. Not the way I loved Elena, where everything felt tragic and doomed. I love you the way soldiers love foxholes, desperately, gratefully, knowing you're the difference between surviving and dying. That's the most Victor Kane declaration of love possible. Lena smiled despite her tears. And I love you too, even though you're controlling and violent and have terrible judgment about when to let people make their own mistakes. We're both disasters then. Complete disasters, but maybe we're disasters who deserve each other. Victor pulled her from the chair into his arms, kissing her with the desperation of someone who'd been certain they'd lost everything and discovered instead they'd found something worth keeping. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena saw something new in his expression. Hope. Fragile and tentative, but real. So we do this? He asked. Build something together knowing it might be messy and complicated and occasionally terrifying? We do this. Lena kissed him again, softer this time. Starting now. Partners in disaster. 6 months later, Lena stood in the library that had once been her cleaning assignment and was now her favorite room in the house. She'd added books to the collection, poetry and philosophy and novels that challenged Victor's worldview. They'd started a tradition of reading to each other in the evenings, trading perspectives and arguments, and the kind of intellectual intimacy that felt more profound than physical. Victor's empire had shifted under her influence. Still criminal in many ways. He couldn't escape that completely, didn't want to, but less violent, more strategic. They'd started redirecting profits toward legitimate investments, building businesses that could eventually replace the illegal income. It would take years, maybe decades. But the trajectory was changing. Lena had found her own role, using her education and natural intelligence to manage the legitimate businesses, to interface with lawyers and accountants and city officials in ways Victor's reputation prevented. She was becoming powerful in her own right, not as Victor's decoration or possession, but as a force that shaped their shared empire. They fought frequently. Lena's desire for transparency clashed with Victor's instinct for secrecy. Victor's protective impulses warred with his promises to treat Lena as an equal. But they'd learned to fight productively, to use conflict as negotiation rather than warfare. Mrs. Chen found them there one evening, Victor reading aloud from meditations while Lena sketched notes in the margins of her own copy. The older woman smiled, satisfied. "You've made something good here," she observed. "Something I wasn't certain either of you was capable of." "We surprise ourselves daily," Lena admitted, "though I think good might be generous. Maybe we've made something functional out of broken pieces." "Functional is better than most people achieve." Mrs. Chen moved to leave, then paused. "Your mother would be proud, Miss Carter. She'd see what you've built from the desperation she left behind. She'd know her suffering wasn't meaningless." After Mrs. Chen departed, Lena sat quietly with Victor's arm around her shoulders, thinking about her mother, about debt and survival, and the unexpected ways grief could transform into something resembling hope. "Do you think we're fooling ourselves?" she asked Victor, "believing we've built something sustainable out of violence and control and desperation?" "Probably." Victor's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "But if we are, at least we're fooling ourselves together. That has to count for something. It counts for everything." Lena leaned into his warmth, letting herself believe, just for tonight, that love could be the thing that redeemed them both. Outside the library windows, the estate's walls stood tall against the darkness, no longer feeling like a cage, but like a sanctuary they'd built together. Inside those walls, two broken people had found each other and decided that broken was acceptable as long as they could be broken together. It wasn't the ending Lena had imagined when she'd first signed her contract as Victor Kane's maid, but it was the ending she'd chosen, freely and knowingly, with eyes open to all the dangers and possibilities. And for the first time since her mother's death, Lena felt something she'd stopped believing possible. She felt home.